In 2035, technological advancements led to the creation of Connect, a virtual reality world that's as realistic as the real world. It featured lifelike AI NPCs, fancy swordsmanship, and magic, attracting over 100 million people. To get to this world, players use VR headset thingies to connect while in some space-looking pods. Next, we head over to the virtual reality game where we see some castle that has had better days. Then there's a blonde-haired warrior turned knife cushion. Of course, the dude bites the dust from that attack while some other soldiers witness what just happened. As for who did this, his name is Bae Do Yan, known as Crash in Game, looking fresh out of Assassin's Creed. Since it's one versus who knows how many, the soldiers feel like they've got this. So, they do the one thing anyone would do to their enemies: charge for an attack. However, they missed out on something. Along with having main character energy, Crash ranks number 13 in the entire game. On top of that, he's classified as a psychokinetic, and this allows him to control the swords that stabbed the fallen soldiers. Then he uses them to slice and dice up the attacking soldiers. After that, a bunch of archers fire a volley of arrows at Crash. But he's too pro for this, so he stops them with his psychic powers and makes the soldiers have a taste of their own medicine. Then Crash makes his way toward the surviving soldiers with a knife in hand and swiftly slices their necks. The remaining soldiers are frustrated by this broken OP ability. But before they can say any other thing, they're looking at a bunch of weapons all floating above them. It was at this moment they knew it was so over for them. Then Crash made it rain for his victims. Now all the soldiers are dead. Crash makes his way into the castle. He removes his mask and hood and seems to be searching for something. Then a random cough draws his attention, and it's from a man who's dressed like some pope, and things seem to be over for him as well. Crash's item of interest is a blue pendant around the priest's neck. He appears panicked as he believed the saviors of the world would be coming. However, all Crash wants is that pendant. He reaches for it and the priest suddenly grabs his arm. Summoning courage, he asks why Crash burned the cities and killed innocents. However, Crash doesn't care what he has to say. He snatches the pendant off the priest's neck. Addressing him as an old man, he told the king not to blame him, but the guild that colluded with the Empire. Shortly, reinforcements arrive, and that's Crash's cue to leave. He heads out, but the priest, with his dying breath, declared that everything would be as God intended, and he would pay for his sins. But Crash still doesn't care, and makes his way to a stone altar. He places the pendant into the conveniently shaped hole on the altar, and a secret passage is revealed. He goes down the staircase, and according to what he heard, it's the location of his target. Shortly, he finally finds it in a surprise. It's a mythical item, the very first of its kind in the world of Connect. According to the Connect lore, the major guilds colluded with the Empire 5 years ago, and this left the world in ruins. However, Crash doesn't have time to listen to NPC Pope lamenting about it, considering the 6 months of struggle he went through for the item. Connect eventually fell into the hands of these major guilds, and now Crash is the only guy who solo leveled all the way to the top 100. Anyway, he opens up his inventory, takes the mythical items, and is sure the guilds will not be pleased to find who took them. Now that's settled, it's time to leave. But something catches Crash's attention, and it's a game cartridge. He picks it up and wonders where it came from. But suddenly, there's an outburst of blue aura from his body, and things aren't looking good. Apparently, there's a connection error in the system, and one scream later, he wakes up in his pod, panicked and bleeding. Crash is frustrated because he thought he was finally making progress, but he doesn't have time to worry about that. Right now, some mafia guys are looking for trouble, and they're the ones who stabbed Crash, right in his own home. For the next plan of action, one of the men makes a call and reports that they have their target, so he asks what to do next. Unluckily, the boss gave instructions to kill Crash and retrieve his head. So with that, they go to restrain him. After hearing that order, Crash is pretty terrified, so he begs for mercy, but he's getting none of that. They cover his face using a bag, and he gets brutally stabbed to death. As Bae's consciousness fades to darkness, this fact of killing people over a game seemed too crazy. And just like that, Crash the pro gamer is no more. Out of nowhere, he hears a voice calling to him, and Crash 2.0 springs up from his bed. He takes a look at his new body and is confused since it was clear that he got stabbed to death. Beside him is a maid who asks if he's okay, addressing him as Lord Raoul. Of course, he's shocked by this, but more importantly, he spots a stats screen above the maid. From it, he learns that the maid's name is Anna and she's at level 3. Then a holographic screen popped up in front of him, making him feel like he was seeing something he shouldn't. The screen informed him that Connect's closed beta system had started. In addition, he can now use the user interface and there's one user online. Seeing this information, he realized he was a user. Muttering to himself, he thought this must be a joke. Then he connects 1 and 2 together and gets shocked to realize that he's in the Connect world. Standing on the balcony, he feels the breeze. But this time, things feel much more realistic compared to when he logged in as Crash. He recalled that the level of connection one had with Connect determined their strength in the game. Normal players had around 30% synchronization, but Bae Do-yeon in his previous life had close to 90%. Because of this, he held the top spot on the leaderboard for 10 years until the major guilds appeared. But now, all that time spent leveling up was just a waste. He dismissed his unfortunate situation and figured he was the only user in the closed beta. Then he reaches out his hand and learns he can still use his inventory in the closed beta. A screen pops up in front of him, scanning his information. His plan is to use the information and power from his past life to get to the top again. Suddenly, a strong headache hit him. He realized that he was Raoul Ashton, the youngest son of Count Ashton. The Ashton family is one of the big 5 families of the Reuben Kingdom, but they're the first to fall and connect. Even though they're one of the 5 esteemed military families, they didn't experience the best. The Count died from an illness, son number 1 died in battle, and son number 2 went MIA. Then a coup occurred after the youngest son inherited the county. During these disasters, the region's protective barrier broke, causing a monster invasion and the end of the family. And currently, Crash is the youngest son of said family, Raoul Ashton. He looks at the beautiful scenery, but it's a shame it'll all be gone in 3 years. However, he's determined to change how things will happen. He's no longer Bae Do-hyun or Crash, making this his last chance at life. After suffering as Bae Do-hyun, it'll be sad to lose that chance again. And to do that, he must start the training arc. At the same time, he also spots a sword. In 1 month, House Ashton will begin the coming-of-age tournament. If he makes it to the semi-finals, he'll get into the Kingdom Academy and will get stronger there. He picks up the sword from earlier and unsheaths it, looking like a proper warrior determined to protect his life. However, after a few swings, he falls on his face. He wonders why he's tired after just a few swings, so he checks his status. He finds out he's at level 5, which is just 2 levels above his maid Anna. Obviously that's no good, so he has to start his tournament-worthy training. A month later, and it's the day of the tournament. Raoul's shocked to see so many participants in the tournament, including a few guys who can easily snap him in 2. He remembers his training and all the pain he went through in the past month to get past the qualifier. He hides behind a huge pillar to check his status, noting that his level is now 13. After seeing that, he's confident he'll have enough stamina for them, plus he has a plan for the matches. As he was going back to the arena, he senses an attack launched at him, but he quickly dodges it. Raoul turns to spot who's responsible for the attack, and he recognizes him as Dion with 2 of his cousins behind him. This dude who's obviously making fun of Raoul is the second son of Viscount Austin, Raoul's uncle, so that means Dion is Raoul's cousin. Normally, Dion always treated him poorly during swordsmanship training. The instructor allowed it because of the family motto, to train like it was real, and that everyone was equal on the training ground, with no one responsible for injuries during training. So, Dion was just a scumbag who took advantage of that rule to bully others. Anyway, Dion tells Raoul to withdraw and threatens to break every bone in his body. He makes fun of Raoul further as he passes by. According to some intel, Dion is expected to win the tournament. However, with a smirk, Raoul is determined to crush Dion in the finals. At the Ashton County Castle, a butler presents the tournament report to the Count. The Count takes the document, asking if there was anyone useful on the list. He takes the report and is shocked by what he saw. He asks for Raoul, and the butler answers that Raoul had gone back to his room after finishing his meal, thinking Raoul had used up all his strength during the qualifier and had gone to rest. From that response, the Count tells the butler to go. His name is Count Melvin Ashton, Raoul's father. After the butler left, Melvin burst into a loud laugh in his office, staring at the tournament report on his desk. He thought to himself that Raoul really was his son. Staring at Raoul Ashton's name on the qualifier report, he felt pride, realizing that Raoul had made it to the group stage. Melvin never forced Raoul to learn how to wield a sword, because he was weaker than his brothers. But then, Raoul started training a month before the tournament. He remembers that Raoul couldn't handle 10 minutes of training, but never gave up. Melvin had always known that Raoul was being taken advantage of during training because of his weak body, as he had observed from the shadows. He knew that if he helped, Raoul would be deemed incapable without his father's aid, so he had to wait until Raoul stood up for himself. But now this act is beyond his expectations. He decided that when the finals were over, he would go see his son who's been working so hard. The day of the finals arrived, and some spectators were angry, shouting about the fighters dragging the match. A fighter is frustrated about why his weak opponent refuses to go down. This weakling is none other than Raoul, who's managing to stand his ground. Raoul's opponent swung his sword at Raoul, but Raoul successfully blocked the attack, frustrating his opponent. The attack was so strong that the force of it pushed him back a few feet. Everyone watching was shocked that such a weak-looking body could parry such a powerful attack from a strong man. Since Raoul had been holding out for quite a long while, the audience began to cheer him on. However, his opponent seems really frustrated and angry. He continues his assault and asks if Raul wasn't ashamed as a member of a Count's family. But Raul is too busy fighting to hear what he has to say. After that, Raul takes a stance with his sword. A spectator shouts to Edmund, Raul's opponent, to end it already, claiming Edmund had dragged the fight out long enough. The spectator revealed he had bet his salary on Edmund. This resonated with Edmund's frustration, and with a face full of rage, he told Raul he was done messing around. He took a fighting stance with his sword drawn. A large wave of thick blue aura and mana overshadowed him, and people were scared, shouting that this technique was mana sword. A woman in the audience, terrified for Raul's life, shouted that someone had to dodge this attack, as it would be over for whoever got hit. Edmund then charges toward Raul with full-on murderous intent. However, something was off. Raul wasn't making any effort to dodge the attack. In an instant, there was an explosion in area where Raul stood. The spectators watched in suspense, wondering what had happened to Raul. But actually, the referee interfered with the match, declaring it over and announcing Raul as the winner. After that miraculous victory, Edmund protests about the results, asking how Raul was the winner. He believed to be on the verge of victory, but the referee calls him a fool and points to his neck. Edmund saw a tiny cut on his neck where blood was flowing and was terrified, realizing Raul was aiming for his neck. This realization shook him to his core, making him fall in fear and panic. Raul moved closer to him, saying they would talk about his disrespect towards himself after the tournament, with an intimidating look. And of course, Edmund is terrified to hear that. After the match, Raul went home, where Anna, the maid, welcomed him. As soon as he entered his room, he burst into excitement about the fact he won. He pulls up his status screen and spots an update that he has leveled up his swordsmanship to level 9. Seeing this made him smile faintly, thinking that the plan had worked. His plan is to fight stronger opponents to gain more XP and level up quickly. This plan only worked because he's playing in hardcore mode, which grants more experience points, but he can't be revived if he dies. At first, this wasn't the best kind of news to hear, but he wouldn't have been able to level up by so much if he was in normal mode. More importantly, he acquired 5 unique traits, with one being Psychokinetic Meister from his past life, and another being Royal Lineage of rank A, while the other 3 were blocked and not available. And you can expect he's going to use them in future matches. Speaking of those, he effortlessly defeated his opponents, winning each match. This feat shocks the crowd since he somehow made it to the grand finale. Some say he's lucky, others say he's cheating, but one thing they don't know is that players can use supernatural powers. But Raul decided it would probably be better to keep it a secret that he could use psychokinesis until other players show up. He felt quite confident in his acting skills, believing he could hide such a secret effortlessly. Then there was a knock on his door from Ivana. He told the person to come in, and the gray-haired butler who served Raul's father entered to check on Raul. He replied that he was perfectly fine, even noting that if he did get hurt, there were priests and healers on standby. Ivan placed a hand on Raul's shoulder, advising him not to let his guard down. With a smile, Ivan reminded him that there were wounds that priests could not heal. Raul acknowledged with a nod, assuring Ivan he would be careful. This display of concern surprises Raul since it's an experience he was not used to from his past life. He then asked Ivan about the thing he had requested. Ivan handed him a paper, saying he had done as Raul asked. He also expressed concern about Dion, who was very powerful. Raul assured Ivan not to worry, confident he would win. Ivan bowed his head, trusting Raul, then left the room. As Ivan left, he thought to himself that Raul's confidence matched the Count's when he was younger. However, Ivan was aware that Sir Dion brutally wounded anyone he faced. Raul, smiling at the paper Ivan had given him, looked at the betting prices involved in Ashton County's betting system. The county had created a legal betting system for the tournament's success, and a part of the rewards also went to the participants. So with this, Raul now has enough capital to secure his place in the family. The next day, Raul arrives at the arena, and the only thing left for him is to crush Dion in the final match of the tournament. It's now time for the final match, and both opponents prepare for battle. While the crowd cheers for who they think will win, Dion calls out to Raul and promises to make sure Raul regrets his decision to compete. He taunted that the people cheering for Raul would soon realize how worthless he was, adding that it would be a sight to see Raul crawling with his limbs cut off. But Raul yawned and didn't care about what he had to say. This angered Dion, making him instantly charge up his mana for the arrogant brat, shocking the spectators. Raul remained calm, thinking Dion was just acting tough. He checked Dion's stats and saw that Dion's potential talent was only B rank. While Dion might look impressive, that was his limit. The match had begun, and Dion charged in for the first attack. However, Raul successfully dodges by leaping into the air. He then counters with a strike that Dion blocked, making him the first to attack. The force from this attack makes Dion skid backward. His face twisted with anger, and he called Raul a show-off. On the other hand, Raul figures that Dion's elasticity was below his expectations. Dion charged again with powerful swings, but Raul dodged them effortlessly as if they were child's play. This frustrated Dion, who couldn't understand why he couldn't hit Raul. Blocking all of Dion's powerful strikes with ease, Raul could see Dion's sword clearly. Then he used his foot to trip Dion. As he fell to the ground, Raul figures he was just like every noble, all talk and no real experience. Dion fell heavily on his face, and Raul couldn't believe such a weak guy was taking advantage of him. This fact he fell face first makes Dion furious, and he vows to kill Raul with purple mana enveloping him. However, Raul was unfazed, thinking the only thing Dion knew was Mana Sword, feeling pity for him as a waste of talent. The crowd gets utterly shocked as Raul knocks the sword out of Dion's hand, nullifying the effect of the Mana Sword. Raul, also covered in mana, commented that Dion was boring and that he was really nothing after all. After this humiliation, Dion charges toward Raul, but he gets tripped, making him fall on his face again. Raul commented that Dion had anger issues and kept falling for the same trick, asking Dion to take a look at his pathetic life, plus the fact he's a shame on Viscount Austin's name. Dion refuses to give up and charges at Raul again, but Raul lands a powerful punch to Dion's face, sending him crashing to the ground. The audience couldn't believe what had happened, that Dion was knocked unconscious by the puny Raul. Then Raul glanced at the referee, asking if the match would continue despite the fact his opponent was down. This snapped the referee out of his own shock, and he quickly announced that the winner of the tournament was Raul Ashton. While some spectators cheered for Raul, others found this fact hard to believe. Either way, Raul was happy that he had won. Suddenly, the exhaustion caused by his low stamina kicks in, so a few healers were summoned to tend to him. Even with that, a screen pops up before Raul, notifying him that the coming-of-age quest had been completed, granting him some rewards as well. But more importantly, he could now make it to the Kingdom Academy. Meanwhile, the Count and his butler watched this grand finale match from the royal section. Even is surprised by how much Raul has grown in a month, but Melvin observes his son. From what he saw, Raul played around with Dion, and considering how far he got in a month, he's a genius. Raul, looking up, saw his father with a proud look, which made him happy. He waved to his father with a bright smile and figured that he was watching. He believed his father probably knew he was good enough to go to the academy now. That night, the Count told Raul that he couldn't allow Raul's request. Raul seemed angry, asking his father why in shock and confusion. He reminded his father that he thought he could go as long as he made it to the semifinals. His father replied that this was situational, explaining that Raul needed to stay by his side longer, and mentioning that Raul fell after the match because of his weak body. Raul reminded his father that learning about the sword was a lifelong journey. Boldly, he told his father he was determined to go to the academy and learn more, and wasn't going to let his father stop him. His father, shocked to hear this, felt relief at the same time, realizing Raul had really grown. He stands up, then tells Raul that if he really wants to go, he will have to get past him, drawing his sword for combat. With the intense mana, he doesn't plan on going easy on his son. On the other hand, Raul is intimidated by this, and the question is what he'll do next. A month later, an army of soldiers escorted a carriage. Inside this carriage is Raul, who managed to escape his father. As for that moment, his father challenged him to a duel, so Raul accepted the challenge and clashed swords with his father. Despite his efforts, his father's overwhelming strength sent Raul flying, leaving him unconscious. This experience made Raul realize his father's true power. Even with how powerful his father is, he's destined to die when the world of Connect starts. After that, everything goes downhill for the county. So for that not to happen, Melvin has to stay alive. With that in mind, Raul is motivated to meet his father's expectations and protect his family from the impending fall. His father, meanwhile, reminisced about Raul's persistence during training. Despite losing several times, Raul never gave up. The Count decided Raul's perseverance was worthy of the Ashton family's dignity. Raul charged on to attack once more, but this time things were different. He changed the trajectory of his sword midway and was able to cut his father's cheek. Even with psychokinesis, Raul was only able to get a drop of blood. So with that, Melvin now acknowledged Raul as a proud swordsman and cheered him on to witness the world. That night, around a campfire, Raul asked Sir Philip about their destination. The High Knight, Philip, estimated they would arrive in 5 days, and Raul decided to maintain their current speed to train the soldiers. The group consisted of 50 people, including knights, trainees, and cavalry, all with high potential talent. Raul knew they needed to get stronger to prevent the fall. Another knight, Jake, announces that the carriage maintenance is done and questions the need for so many people. Raul assured him the reason would become clear once they reached Mira. This city is one of the first that players go to after completing the tutorial, and it's known for its quests, hidden items, and mana limitations to prevent beginner players from being hunted. More importantly, it has infinite resources, including a place called God's Domain, which is perfect for grinding and leveling quickly. And this is why Raoul's bringing so many soldiers to the city. While that seems like a nice plan, Raoul also gets a notification saying he has unlocked a few features and received a new quest. He thought that these features wouldn't be available until the official launch, but he figured he could unlock more by meeting some requirements. Shortly, Jake pops up informing Raoul that he can meet with the mayor, and that's exactly what he plans to do. The mayor of Mira, whose name is Ronaldo, learns that Raoul has come to visit with 50 of his troops. The mayor is aware of Raoul's weak reputation, but he decides to let him in. Since the Ashton family gets their fortune from monster materials, Ronaldo sees this as a chance to get some of that monster dough. Shortly, Raoul arrives and greets Ronaldo. Like the slippery weasel he is, Ronaldo welcomes him and they go straight for negotiations. Raoul mentions that there's a place to train in Mira, not just any regular place. He asks for permission to enter the cursed forest. Ronaldo's shocked by this request since it's too dangerous. So with that response, Raoul has no other choice but to bring out the big guns. He makes an offer of 500k in gold, and the mayor changes his mind faster than the Flash at full speed. Raoul is now pleased with the outcome, and all that's left is to grind his way to the top of Connect once again. This is the free city of Mira, built for Connect players. Currently, there are no players here since it is a closed beta, except for Raoul Ashton. The city is experiencing a crisis, with many businesses and facility buildings disproportionate to the number of people living here. Even the land prices have dropped because of this. Speaking of that, Raoul's real purpose for coming was for real estate. He planned to take over cheap lands in Mira, which would be used for all kinds of buildings. In the future, these lands would be worth more than 100 times their current value. Once players come in and war breaks out like in the past, Mira would become a perfect shelter. Back then, money could be made by just lending land. However, Raoul knew he had to be even more prepared this time around. He begins cursing the guilds in his mind since he couldn't go band for band with them in his past life. But this time, things will be different. Raoul and his teammates signed the form, with only Jake being hesitant. Raoul managed to persuade him to sign. After they had all signed their forms, a lady confirmed that including Raoul, there was a total of 51 creating and registering the guild literally named First. Raoul ended up creating the first and most advanced guild in a world without players, and is proud of it. He held this precious record, knowing his members would get assistance from the system as guild members. He was excited to see the confused look on his teammates' faces while Jake was still worried about what he just signed up for. Next, Raoul and his comrades went to the Battle Association's branch office in Mira. After being welcomed by the receptionist, Raoul asked for the highest-ranking skill books they had. Skill books contain different skills, and if one reads them carefully, one can learn the skill. Skill ranks go from rank F to rank S. The lady replied that their branch office offered up to rank C skill books, but they could only be purchased by VIP customers. To become a VIP, one though have to either complete quests for the Battle Association or by spending a lot of cash through purchases. For the purchase route, one would have to spend up to 10,000 gold. Since Raoul is a rich kid, he casually drops the cash for the premium pass. He also asks for the D rank books for a start. The lady's overjoyed by this and asks for which books he's interested in. With a smile, Raoul asks for every single one of them. Soon, Raoul and his knights were carrying big stacks of books, with Jake whining about carrying such a heavy load. Raoul replied that it might seem bothersome now, but these books would advance them to a higher level. Even though the books are really detailed, Jake and Philip feel that they're for beginners and suggest that buying power armor was a better idea. However, Raoul told to be patient and they will see the benefit tomorrow. That night, Raoul stares at the hoard of books, thinking it's too much. He thought about the limits on the number of skills a player could use, making them unable to use various skills. He opened his quest window, remembering that when he woke up in Raoul's body, there were 2 unknown items in the inventory. This made him wonder what these items were. He soon realized he couldn't click or use them. He remembered that the day before when he got the quest, he was finally able to use those items. He opened his inventory and found out that one of them was a sealed skill dex. He wondered if the reward for the quest was the skill dex activation, with the objective of collecting at least 10 skill books and registering them in the skill dex. He proceeded with the task, opening the dex and holding the skill book to register them. Suddenly, the book he opened automatically, emitting a purple light that jumped into his status dex book. He was shocked that it worked, realizing the mana in the skill book was now gone. Looking at the dozen stacks of books on the ground, he thought it would take forever to do them all, and wonders how he would register all of them at once. Suddenly, all the books on the ground flew up into the sky, and purple light emanated from them, jumping into the dex book. Seeing this, he was shocked, wondering if the dex book understood what he was saying. He concluded that it did since it worked. He was notified that the quest skill collector had been completed, and that skill dex had been activated. He received an extra reward of Skill Collector being unlocked and another extra reward called Copycat. Looking at his stats, he couldn't help but think stealing someone else's skill is overpowered. As he checked out more details about his skill decks, he realized this was the mythical item he got right before he died in his past life. Realizing that some parts of his past life came with him, he concluded the only things left were 3 Grade X traits and 1 item in the inventory left to uncover. The next day, his subordinates were shocked as they discovered what was called a guild chat. A red-haired man greeted Raoul, who's very much sleep-deprived because of reading through the skill decks all night. Raoul asks the man if he had explained everything to his subordinates as instructed, and he replied with yes. After hearing that, Raoul excitedly asks him if he has tried the skill book. This man's name is Bernard, a servant of the Ashton family, and Ivan's stepson. He has been working for the county at a young age, and was even mentored by Ivan himself. Even though he's reliable in getting things done, Raoul chose him for another reason. That aside for a moment, Bernard demonstrated his power, controlling the wind. This amazed Raoul, and he thought it was amazing. It was because of this power that Raoul chose Bernard. Hearing his master's praise, he bowed his head, flattered. Raoul, looking at Bernard's stats, realized that although Bernard lacked stats, he had great talent as a servant or an esper. With this, Raoul was done with his preparation, so he told Bernard to get ready. He then explained that they were leaving for God's domain, aka the Cursed Forest, as soon as the knights were used to everything. As they entered the Cursed Forest, they were greeted by various monsters. One of these giant monsters confidently swung its giant axe at Raoul, shattering the ground. Raoul jumped up and dodged the attack easily. Then he countered the monster with a punch to the head. In an instant, the monster's head scattered into pieces, with blood splattering everywhere. After that, Raoul orders the rest of the monsters who were hiding to come out. One by one, they all step forth. They recognized Raoul as a very strong human and decided to kill him. The leader of the monsters gave a charge, and the monsters started running towards Raoul, surrounding him in an instant. Raoul seemed excited about the situation and is ready to deliver a beat down. The Cursed Forest, aka God's Domain, wasn't just the grinding zone. It stood for the entire city of Mira. If players got hurt, they were healed, and if they died, they revived in Mira. This made it the best shelter. In the forest, this blessing only applied to monsters, so their numbers stayed the same even after being killed. Humans couldn't be revived in the Cursed Forest and couldn't take items from hunting monsters outside the forest, as they would turn to ashes and disappear. This rule applied to civilians, but players could take items outside with system assistance. Jake whined as Raoul continued defeating giant monsters one after another with a single blow. Philip gave Jake a stern look, wondering why that was. Raoul kept fighting, defeating the giant monsters with powerful punches. Their leader, seeing its subordinates being defeated, wonders about the kind of power Raoul had. So, to demonstrate, Raoul lifted various weapons using his psychic powers, shocking the monster leader. Raoul directs and shoots these weapons at the monster, explaining that this is psychokinesis, and Jake says the same thing as well. Now the monsters were slain. Jake commented that it was a convenient ability. However, Philip wants him to do less talking and more skinning. Jake sighed loudly, saying he didn't come all the way to Mira for this, but admitted they had made good progress from the training. The treasure of the ogre monsters was stored in a huge bag, and then Raoul thanked his subordinates for their help. He told them they could get stronger by studying the skill books. Philip, hearing this, knew the young master was right. Suddenly, Philip drew his blade because an ogre was charging at them. Then he used Hangitsuzan, swinging his short blade and cutting the ogre in half. From that display, it was the reason why Raoul invested in skill books rather than power armor. Philip's eyes widened in shock at his feat, realizing he had quickly learned a new skill. He was intrigued by the young master, fascinated by his knowledge. Suddenly, the guild chat screen popped up in front of Philip, and what he saw shocked him. He alerts Raoul about this, and the young master is also aware of it too. So he orders that they return to Mira immediately. Meanwhile, the rest of Raoul's subordinates in the city were being persecuted with swords. Their persecutors drove swords into their backs, commenting that they should have done this earlier. One of the persecutors said it was hard to hold back after seeing the Ashtons walking around. Another persecutor, with similar hair, commented that his brother should have listened to him earlier to do this sooner. The persecuted men cried out in pain, asking why this was happening, while the persecutors slashed through them. There were 3 persecutors: Ramon, Randall Viscounty's first son, Jerry, the second son, and Cale, the third son. The injured men warned the persecutors that their young master would come for them. From that statement, Ramon slashes the injured soldier, laughing loudly. He mockingly told the men to hurry and call their young master, saying they also had some business with him. One thing the brothers noticed is that the soldiers kept reviving, no matter how many times they were killed. Jerry suggested they go after Raoul and kill him. Kale mentioned that noble families weren't supposed to attack each other in the free city, but Ramon replied that this rule wouldn't be a problem, saying they could claim they didn't do it. He suggested that their great-grandfather might even compliment them for it, but out of nowhere, Ramon's head exploded, alerting the other two brothers. When they looked back, they saw Raoul furious. For this offense against the Ashton County, he's determined to make them pay with more than just their worthless deaths. After witnessing his brother's head explode, Jerry shouted, asking if Raoul was crazy enough to touch the son of the Randall family. Kale, also outraged, wondered what the Knights were doing. These Knights were captured by Raoul's men, believing they were the Ashton family's main forces. With that settled, Philip informed Raoul that they had surrounded the Randall Knights as ordered, and ensured there were no civilians nearby. Raoul praised his men for their good work. Using his psychokinesis, he lifted his injured men, floating them in the sky and telling Bernard to take them to the shrine. Raoul opened his inventory to retrieve his sword, telling his men he would clean up the garbage himself. The Randall Viscounty was one of the 5 warrior families of the Reuben Kingdom like the Ashton County. However, unlike them, the Randall family did not have a long history. The 4 warrior families were reorganized into the 5 warrior families when the current Lord, Viscount Hudson D. Randall, reached the Swordmaster stage. As a family with a short history, they had to figure out various ways to secure their place by consistently producing great knights, making respectable contributions, and crushing their opponents. The opponent they targeted was Ashton County because it had not produced a swordmaster in a long time. Plus, they were the least politically inclined, making them risk-free. Many conflicts between these two families occurred across the kingdom, mostly initiated by the Randall family. Everyone expected the Randall Viscounty to win, given their numerous swordmasters. Like the other encounters, the same thing was expected in this scenario from the people of Randall. Jerry was the first to worry, pondering Raoul's unusual strength. He was even more baffled when Raoul pulled a sword out of thin air. The knight nearby twitched a bit, and Raoul decided to slice off his leg with a single swing. After that terrifying display, Philip told his comrades to put away their swords, reminding them that the young master had said he would handle the situation. A particular knight of the Randall family with yellow hair couldn't believe Raoul's subordinates were actually putting away their swords, wondering if they were insane. He thought he couldn't complain about the situation as it favored them. Kale was furious, asking if Raoul was really going to fight them alone. As he swung his weapon at Raoul, he told him this was not training. But with a single swing of his sword, Raoul cleanly cut him into 2. Jerry, concerned for his brother, called for the knights to help. The knight with yellow hair stepped forward since he had no other choice. He wasn't so keen to take advantage of a 15-year-old kid. He noted that if he didn't act while his comrades were going down, it wouldn't be the right thing to do. Raoul checked the man's stats and found out his name was Jeremy, the Randall family's main weapon master who wielded a rapier. Seeing the warriors with Jeremy, Raoul thought they must be the elites. Jeremy and his elite warriors took formation, ready to attack Raoul. After checking their stats, Raoul noted the leader's level was 65, while the other elites were around level 60. Raoul's current level was 45, and he knew he couldn't win against them normally. The elite warriors suggested that Raoul should stop his assault, but he doesn't care. Raoul jumped and charged at them. With a single swing, he slices one of the soldiers. Then he uses a technique called bear strike to strike the ground. Soldier number 2 tries to see within the dust and smoke, but it's his turn next. Raoul slices through the guy. Finally, Jeremy launches an attack which surprises Raoul. But fortunately, he defends himself from the attack which sends him back a few feet. As the dust cleared, Jeremy asked his last subordinate if he was okay, and he replied yes. Just like that, 2 of Jeremy's comrades went down. He recalled hearing that Raoul was weak and didn't know how to wield a sword. But since he's much different from the rumors, he draws a dagger and has to get serious. Meanwhile, Raoul told Jeremy to bring it on. Raoul recognized the weapons in Jeremy's hands as a parrying dagger and a rapier, wondering if Jeremy was using Randall Viscounty's sword skill known as Shooting Star. Jeremy, seeing Raoul unflinching and ready to attack, commented that he liked Raoul's bravery. He noted that every wound healed in Mira and told Raoul he couldn't fight them alone. However, that's not the case. Raoul figures that Jeremy and his knights didn't even train after arriving in Mira. Jeremy was shocked to hear this, wondering how Raoul knew. The shocked look on Jeremy's face made Raoul realize his guess was right. He points out the 2 soldiers he had cut down earlier and how they were shaking in their boots even after their wounds had healed. This was proof of his hypothesis, showing that Jeremy's soldiers were not used to death. Jeremy, hearing Raoul talk, realized that Raoul understood more than just combat. He could see everything, and he acknowledged Raoul as a threat. As Jeremy was about to charge forward, he told his elite soldiers to cover him from the back. Then he launched himself at Raoul, and the 2 exchanged blows. In a fraction of a second, Jeremy successfully grazed Raoul's face. along with several cuts on his body. The elite soldier, seeing an opening, charged forward to deliver the finishing strike on Raoul. Jeremy shouted for him to stop, but Raoul swiftly slashed the elite soldier into two. Jeremy called his elite soldier a fool, but anyway, there was no time to waste. He activated the Randall's sword vision skill called Shooting Star, charging at Raoul with his two blades. Raoul, seeing Jeremy glowing with golden light of mana, was ready, gripping his sword firmly. The Shooting Star attack landed, raining tiny balls of meteors on Raoul. Raoul parried the attack, struggling even with psychokinesis, but he kept up with the attack, standing his ground despite the incoming rain of meteors. This shocked Jeremy, who wondered how such a thing was possible. He felt he was dominating the fight, pressing Raoul all the way back. But Jeremy was frustrated, wondering why Raoul still had arrogant eyes as if he had the upper hand. Still, Raoul blocked the attack with confidence, then mentioned 100%. Jeremy, shocked, wondered what Raoul was talking about. Raoul swung his sword powerfully and knocked Jeremy's swords out of his hands. The system notified Raoul that the opponent's skill examination was 100% complete, and Copycat was ready for use. The function of the Copycat skill was to copy the exact moves and engrave the skill into the decks. Jeremy watched helplessly as his two swords flew high into the sky. In an instant, Raoul activated Copycat, using Randall's sword skill Shooting Star, sending a rain of meteors on Jeremy. Jeremy, seeing the Shooting Star attack approaching, was terrified, freezing in place. He wondered how this was possible, knowing the attack Raoul unleashed was definitely Shooting Star. As the rain of meteors came pouring on Jeremy, he used his arms to shield himself. Taking on the full brunt of the Shooting Star technique, Jeremy was angry and frustrated, wanting to know who betrayed them and taught Raoul this sword skill. Raoul, now close to Jeremy, informed him that it was Jeremy himself who had taught him. Jeremy, confused by what he just heard, asked what Raoul meant. Before Jeremy could react, Raoul drove a dagger through Jeremy's belly, making him fall to his knees. The sword skill of the Randall's Shooting Star was now fully integrated as part of Raoul's skill. Raoul stood over the defeated Jeremy, thinking to himself that it was now over. He acknowledged that using the rank S skill Copycat was difficult, since it was overpowered. Copycat, a skill he learned with the skill decks, allowed him to copy the opponent's skill, but could only copy one skill at a time. During its activation, the user couldn't lose sight of the target, as losing sight would reset the examination rate. This was why Raoul didn't blink when taking Jeremy's attacks. It was also impossible to steal a skill unless it was a one-on-one fight. Raoul displayed his skills, satisfied with the numerous skills he now possessed. He thanked the skill decks that allowed him to use 3 more skills, noting the selection slot on his screen that allowed him to freely use 2 skills registered in the skill decks. He planned to use it soon. Jerry Randall, who witnessed Raoul's overwhelming power, shouted in shock, asking who exactly Raoul was and how he managed to use Randall's sword skill. His terrified face made it seem as if his skin would peel off. This drew Raoul's attention to Jerry, and Raoul told Sir Philip to kill every one of Randall's knights and the 3 Randall brothers every time they revived for an hour. Sir Philip agrees with this, and with that, he and his comrades set off to work. As Philip and his men started carrying out Raoul's order, Jerry begged for forgiveness, pleading with Raoul to forgive him. Raoul, with a stern face, glanced at Jerry, telling him it was blood for blood. As he walked away, he thought to himself that this was not Earth or a game. This was the reality presented to him. He resolved to do everything to not lose again. Even if it meant wading through a pool of blood, he was determined not to lose. The mayor looked out of his tall office window with a monocular, surprised by what he saw. According to the plan, the Randall Viscounty was supposed to attack Raoul, and the mayor would get his share after mobilizing guards to help. However, the mayor was shocked to see Raoul standing gallantly over 15 defeated knights. Raoul looked in the direction of the mayor's office, as though he could see the mayor from such a far distance. After seeing this, the mayor ducks in fear to avoid being seen. He sat on the ground, wondering how Raoul found out he was there. He panicked, calling Raoul a bastard in his mind, and wondered if Raoul was not just a rich and good-looking pushover. Then he started thinking if Raoul was a hidden swordmaster of the county, which terrified him. If that's the case, he figures that Raoul must have known all his plans. As his nerves started calming down, he planned to be more friendly with Ashton County in the future. Raoul thought to himself that he might have overdone it a bit with the punishment. But still, he did get some juicy rewards out of that quest. On top of that, he also collected about 5,000 gold, a space-expanding magic item that could hold a carriage's worth of luggage, and a new set of weapons, a unique grade rapier and a main gauche set from the Randall County Scoundrels. Removing the grade skill book draw ticket, Raoul was particularly happy about it. He was anxious and excited about it, praying it would be something amazing. As he ripped the ticket, he changed his prayer, hoping it wouldn't be a dud. Then a bright white light appeared, and what he got this time was a skill book called Rivera Spearmanship. This was a win since spearmanship was necessary for his next destination in the capital. Now, there was only one more important thing to do in Mira now. Since he has invested 1 month in the place, he intends to succeed. A week later, Raoul was seen in the cursed forest killing ogres with his new rapier. His screen notified him that he had reached level 51 and achieved the level necessary for promotion. With that, he got upgraded from sword user to sword expert, and from beginner psychokinetic to intermediate psychokinetic. Both Philip and Jake, who witnessed this, were excited for him. Jake commented that it was awesome for the young master to be a sword expert at 15 years old. Raoul stretched his hand forward, raising some rocks around him. Then, he jerked his arm downward, directing the rocks to shoot like bullets to the ground. Raoul didn't stop there. He removed his sword, rushed forward, and activated the bear strike technique. He leaped into the air and struck the ground, shattering it. He asked his subordinates if the ground should be like this. His subordinates, with utmost respect, commented that it was wonderful, just as expected of the young master. Jake laughed, saying that now the young master could do everything without them. With a smile, Jake suggested they take a breather and relax. Philip, hearing this, pulled Jake's ear, telling him to think about how much Jake needed to sleep to keep up with the young master. Jake shouted in pain, telling Philip it was a joke. Philip replied that Jake was all talk. Jake said that since the young master had worked so hard, he was just suggesting they take it easy, laughing again. Raoul laughed in his mind, seeing the childish squabbling of the two. He commented that he didn't plan on taking a break yet. Philip asked what he would like to do. Jake asked if they should contact Raoul's family, saying the Count would be thrilled with Raoul's development. Raoul replied that he would tell his family himself later, and asked the two to keep it a secret for now. They both agreed. By now, Raoul had hunted enough monsters and leveled up enough. He asked himself what he should do next. While thinking about this, both Philip and Jake were still squabbling. Raoul thought that he had laid all the bait out, and that all that remained was for the prey to take it. He told the two that they should go now, and they agreed. As they went, he thought that now the dogs of the Empire should hurry and come just as he had planned. They entered the city of Mira and stopped by a shop where they sold the monster products they had gathered in the forest. After selling the materials, they said their goodbyes to the shop owner. The shop owner, Nakia, was a young lady and an alchemist. As she arranged her shop before closing, she smiled, thinking that potions were very popular these days, thanks to Ashton County for providing materials. Producing potions required monster byproducts, which were rarely available in the city. Nakia had struggled to obtain these materials until the people from Ashton County started bringing them in. Since they were players, they could leave the forest with the spoils they obtained, unlike the civilians of the city who couldn't. Because of the monster byproducts brought to Nakia, she was able to produce potions every day. Not only that, but the county's people stopped by her shop every morning, offering to take any requests, and asking about her well-being in general. This made her happy, thinking he was a bit strange, but she was grateful to him. Blushing, she admitted to herself that Raoul was good-looking. Hearing herself say this out loud, she slapped some sense into herself, remembering that Raoul was just 15 years old, 8 years younger than her, and a noble. By now, she had arrived at her doorstep. As she opened the door, she shouted, "Nikki," with great excitement, announcing she was back. However, she heard no response, which shocked her. She called Nikki's name again, waiting for a reply but still heard nothing. She rushed to Nikki's room, where she saw a paper stabbed into the bed with a knife. The letter stated that they had taken Nakia's little sister and advised her not to tell anyone about it and to wait for the next instructions. Seeing this, Nakia was shocked, her nerves swelling with panic as she realized that her little sister had been kidnapped. Nakia dashed out of her house, running through the city with a look of horror on her face. As she ran, she thought about Nikki's life being in danger if she left the city. She muttered under her breath about the kidnappings and how the city government claimed to be investigating. Realizing the rumor was true, she couldn't go to the city government or the guards, and asking mercenaries or the adventurer guild would take time. Confused and crying, Nakia remembered Raoul and how he had told her to come to him if she was ever in trouble. So she decided to do just that since it's the only way, and dashed toward his lodging. Meanwhile, Raoul was informed by Pierce through the guild chat that Nakia was heading toward him. Reading this, Raoul thought it had come to this, referring to a particular situation. He instructed his subordinates to get into positions, stay on their targets, and report any changes. Raoul accessed the Connect community known as Link Cafe, an information treasury holding hidden pieces of information in Connect. As a star player, he had used this in his past life to plan better. He searched the free city of Mira in the Connect community and checked various quests he could take, hoping everything would go as planned. While ruminating on his thoughts, Raoul was informed that Nakia had arrived. He wondered if he could change Nakia's future and told his subordinates to treat her politely. In Raoul's past life, Nakia had been an object of fear, conducting experiments on humans for revenge against the Empire. However, at the moment, Nakia was just a desperate girl asking for his help. Upon seeing Raoul, Nakia burst into tears, asking for his help and explaining that Nikki was gone. Raoul placed his hand on her shoulder, telling her to calm down and assuring her that he would help. She mentioned that Nikki should have been home 2 hours ago and begged Raoul to find her sister, saying it was all her fault. Raoul held her hands with a confident face, telling her not to worry and assuring her that they would find Nikki. He believed to know where she was. Nakia was shocked, asking if this was really so, and begged him to find her sister. Raoul told her he would let her know as soon as he found Nikki, instructing her to stay there and telling her that Bernard would help her. He reassured her to let him know if she needed anything. Raoul left Nakia in Bernard's hands. After he left, Bernard showed courtesy to Nakia, telling her she made an excellent choice since the young master kept his promises. Philip revealed that Pierce was tracking them down. Then he stated that he got permission to operate from Mayor Ronaldo, handing over a scroll to Raoul. A status screen popped up, notifying him that a new quest had opened: to defeat unknown rogues and rescue hostages by raiding the hideout in the forest. Raoul told Philip this was good and asked if he had given the mayor the list of rats. Philip replied yes, saying the mayor would reward them later. Apparently, Raoul had given the mayor the list of rogues hidden in the city using information from his informant and the Link Cafe. He made sure there were no holes in their plan. So with that, Raoul told his subordinates to begin the quest they had received. Little did they know that a couple of soldiers were spying on them. Somewhere else, Pierce and his comrades moved stealthily in the forest. Pierce was a member of Ashton County's Golden Bear Knights and one of Raoul's guard knights. He had found some secret hideout, judging by the traces on the ground. He initiated the operation, jumping on a tree to gain leverage, and activated detection magic, seeing red mana forming a giant wall before them, along with a few soldiers with some markings on the ground below them. He recognized this as phantom magic circles and barriers, confirming that the young master was right. So he reported the situation. The young master notified him that they would arrive at Pierce's location in 5 minutes. Pierce flashed back to 5 months ago, when Raoul was known for his weakness compared to his brothers. Many knights didn't want to travel with Raoul, and even when he looked for volunteers, no one seemed interested. Raoul visited the knights' training ground and started talking to them, including Pierce. Raoul offered to help him go past his limits and pointed out issues with his sword technique. As they trained together, Pierce initially believed he was wasting his time, but later realized the young master could really help him and decided to follow him. From there, things began to look bright for Pierce. Raoul also recognized agility as his stronger point, so he recommended Pierce to improve with the way of the bow. Only a few people recognized his talent with a bow, so he decided to follow Raoul from that moment. Snapping out of the flashback, Pierce thought it was the best decision he had made and believed everyone who declined Raoul's offer probably regretted it. He wondered why Raoul was hiding his power. Pierce had reached the high expert stage with the skill book Raoul gave them, and hoped today would be the glorious day when Raoul showed his true strength. From the tree branch, Pierce saw the young master's horses approaching. He jumped down, kneeling in allegiance, announcing that the young master had arrived. Raoul looked forward, notified that this place was an unknown rogue's hideout with a 3-circle or higher magic circle interfering with vision. Raoul's choice was to destroy this circle to get inside and learn more information. He thought that hideouts looked the same in different cities and recalled that the Kranen Empire's spies were hiding in Mira. Based on Raoul's memories from his past life, he knew that Connect players get quests from starting cities like Mira and get rewards for killing monsters or rogues. However, there were unusual rogues, human traffickers, mercenaries, and the most dangerous, the Kranen Empire's spies known as the Imperial Hounds. These people hunted players and took unfair advantage of them. Raoul knew these people were crucial in the late game and couldn't let them be. So he gave the order to Sir Pierce to shoot at the red barrier of the magic circle with his arrow. The arrow took out the rogue standing guard at the barrier of magic circles, and now there was no one at the entrance. Raoul moved closer to the magic circle, planning to dispel it with a scroll he bought earlier. As he was about to use the scroll, he realized he could see the mana flow and wondered if he could do this without the scroll. He took out his sword, inserted mana into it, and cut through the magic circle barrier, destroying it. Raoul was glad because now, instead of buying scrolls, he could save money. Pierce thought it was just as expected of the young master. He informed Raoul that Jackson would lure the rogues as planned and let him know when to enter. Raoul, excited that he had elite knights with him, told his subordinates it was time to hunt these rogues. Raoul told his subordinates that they did not need captives, and their goal was to hunt everyone down. He reminded his soldiers to use the rapier for the last blow. Jake, on the other hand, doesn't see the need for it, but would follow the young master's order. He remarked that this did not even seem to be a task where they needed to use weapons anyway. Raoul told Pierce to watch out for the kidnapped people, particularly focusing on saving Nakia's younger sister Nikki, and Pierce acknowledged this. Raoul then told Philip they should go in. Then he opened the gate using his power, and they all head in. After spotting the main hideout, Raoul was notified that Pierce had successfully infiltrated the opponent's base. He replied good, saying they should start hunting now. As they proceeded, Raoul noticed the high cave ceiling and wooden fences spread around. Scanning the rogues, he found their levels were around 30 and 31, not much different from regular thieves. Since he had checked the base, he gave the orders to start hunting. He gave some hand signs to instruct his comrades. After that, they all charged in. Raoul was the first to swing his sword, taking out several rogues before they could even call for help. Raoul and his men pressed further inside the cave, shooting arrows and driving their swords through the rogues. The commander of the rogues spotted the intruders, telling his subordinates to guard the fences and kill them. The rogues quickly gathered their numbers, ready to kill the intruders who had infiltrated their base. Raoul realized their numbers were increasing, plus they had organized themselves to start blocking his arrows. They formed a team of archers, and they all fired their arrows at him. As a multitude of arrows approached Raoul, but he stopped them using psychokinesis. The commander, seeing this, was shocked, realizing the intruder had stopped the arrows and ordered for backup from downstairs. Next, several bandits charged at Raoul since arrows did not work on this intruder. However, Raoul has something else planned. He broke out 6 knives, 3 in each hand. While he did that, a bandit tried to attack him at close range, but the dude got blasted away. Then Raoul raised all the arrows that had been shot at him earlier. The commander of the rogues could not believe what he was seeing, his face etched in shock, asking himself if this was really magic. Before he could get an answer to that, Raoul sent the arrows down like bullets, hitting many of the rogues and defeating them. After spotting a surviving soldier, Raoul figured that the arrows were still not powerful enough and needed to exert more force into them to pierce through the armor. So, he leaps towards this rogue and delivers the finishing blow, also wondering where his teammates are. Speaking of them, they're going sicko mode on the rogues. Jake finishes off one rogue, looking a bit frustrated. Raoul recognizes that was his way of rebelling, showing that he did not want to use the rapier. His movements were wasting mana, and Ashton told him not to do that several times since that leaves traces of swordsmanship. Either way, he doesn't need to worry since they're almost done taking care of the small fries. Shortly, Pierce reported to Raoul, apologizing that they could not find Nikki. Raoul replied it was okay, asking if Pierce had explained things to the captive villagers. He did that and also distributed clothes and food to them. He also told the captive villagers to wait in one place until the battle ended. Jake asked the young master if he really thought there were other enemies. Raoul replied that there were other enemies, asking if Jake did not think it was a little weird. Jake asked what the young master meant by weird, and Raoul explained that first, Nikki, who was kidnapped, was not there. Second, there were many rogues, but none stood out among the rest. Lastly, there was a magic circle at the entrance, asking if anyone had seen a wizard there. No one had seen anyone like that, so this probably meant the important people and captives were in another place. Jake smiled, saying it was true, but if they couldn't find that place, it would all be useless. Pierce commented that he actually checked some suspicious-looking places but could not find anything with his ability, thinking there could be a high-level magic circle or system. Raoul patted Pierce's shoulder, commending his improvement within 1 month of joining the guild. Pierce thanked the young master for his praise with Jake jealous in the background. But anyway, Raoul asks that they follow him since he may have an idea of where they are. Raoul led his subordinates to a hut, telling them to search the hut and report right away if something seemed suspicious. After searching, they couldn't find anything suspicious and had arrived at the 4th hut. But in this one, Raoul detects something, drawing his sword and informing his men to get ready. He kicks a table away, then stabs the floor of the hut. The impact made the wooden floor scatter, revealing some metallic doors. They pulled the doors open and saw secret stairs leading to the basement. Shortly, Raoul detected that something was approaching. A huge monster hand emerged from the stairs, and Jake used his sword to parry off the huge red monster hand. He had never seen anything like this before. Shortly, the monster reveals its full body. Philip told his comrades not to step away from these emerging red monsters, telling them it would be harder to fight the red monsters if they scattered. Raoul stepped forward to attack the red monsters. Philip explains that the monsters are the Imperial Demon Cavalry, and their weak spot is their heads. Even though the reason why they're there is unknown, Raoul jumped up to strike at a monster and thought of studying their traits. Checking the stats of the red monsters, he was notified by his screen that these were incomplete Imperial Demon Cavalry, level 41, Type 1 Cranon Imperial Demon Cavalry. This was just as he had expected because Raoul had a hard time in the past because of them. In his past life as Bai Do-hyun, he had attacked the Empire's hideout in the starting city on his 6th month of playing the game due to the mayor's request. When the players were about to graduate from the starting city, 10 of the top players who had finished changing jobs for the 2nd time formed a punitive force with hundreds of guild allegiances and took over the fortress. However, when the real Imperial Demon cavalries who were hiding showed up, most of the players were wiped out immediately. The Rankers, including Bei, barely got away, and no one was able to near the Empire's hideout for 6 months after this. The Demon cavalry at that time was completed, with an average level near 50. But now it was different. The Demon cavalry was incomplete, with lower levels, and Raoul's escorts were expert high-class knights over level 80. More importantly, Raoul could see the vital points of the Demon cavalry, which were randomly placed. All he had to do was stab at these vital points, and in no time, they defeated all the red monsters. Philip asked why the Imperial Demon cavalry was in a place akin to the kingdom's front yard, and what they should do next. He expressed concern that it would be dangerous to go inside. Raoul replied that they would go in, since they couldn't back out now. Pierce suggested getting some backup, but Raoul disagreed, saying the captives would be in more danger the longer it took. Since that was so, Philip suggested that the young master should stay behind them and focus on searching with Pierce, while they would handle the enemies. It was a shame he'll be missing out on good XP points, but now's not the time for Raoul to be greedy. Besides, he would get part of the experience points even if he didn't kill the enemies himself. It was his turn to be carried, but he figured it was nice to have such reliable subordinates. Both Jake and Philip decided to go first. They proceeded down the stairs that led to the basement. While Jake made a few suggestions of how they should be killed, they arrived at some kind of lab that had big tubes housing monsters in a jelly green-like fluid, and several monster parts. Pierce, in shock, commented that the rogues were fearless to be doing chimera research in another country's territory. He realized the demon cavalry they fought must have been made from the citizens the rogues kidnapped, expressing disbelief that the rogues were this crazy. Raoul had seen these kinds of scenes several times in his past life, but it still creeped him out. He had actually thought about joining these people in high power when he reincarnated, because they would seize supremacy over the continent in about 10 years. However, he knew their emperor was crazy, and becoming the subordinate of such a man would be like jumping into a fire with a bomb in hand. Raoul knew there were many baseless rumors about the emperor, but he was sure of one thing. The emperor did not look at humans as humans. All humans who did not carry the royal blood were divided into classes depending on their worth and suffered their entire lives doing labor. When they became useless, they were used as experimental rats or became food for the Imperial Demon cavalry. Even high-class citizens who bothered the emperor were executed. Raoul remembered clearly how a general who complained about the emperor's tyranny had his tattoo glow red, spread throughout his body, and then exploded, killing him. Raoul had no plan of surviving by sticking to someone like that. He couldn't allow experiments on innocent civilians. It doesn't take long until Philip draws Raoul's attention. They spot a few trying to activate a magic circle to secure their exit route. Pierce reported to the young master that there were 4 knights, 3 wizards, and 10 Imperial cavalry. It seemed the wizards were trying to activate the magic circle in front of the cave. Philip said he would take care of the knights. Pierce would handle the wizards, and Jake would deal with the Imperial Demon cavalry after them, which he doesn't seem pleased with. But one glare from Philip shuts him up. Pierce, from a high ground, delivered a clean headshot on a wizard, causing the rogues to detect them. Raoul gave the order to attack, and he and his men started charging towards the rogues. As Raoul was running, he drew an arrow and figured that the 5 circle wizards had to be taken care of first. Seeing the red magic circle shielding this wizard, Raoul knew ordinary arrows wouldn't work. He decided to put some psychokinesis over it and make a psychokinesis pathway for the arrow. After that, he shot the arrow which broke the barrier and took out the wizard. Raoul was satisfied they stopped the bandits from escaping. The leader of the rogues, seeing that their only ticket out is gone, ordered his subordinates to release the seal and kill everyone. So they do that, getting all veiny and charged up, and are very dedicated to their emperor. And with that, they're ready for their showdown. As the elite rogues approached, determined to battle for their emperor's honor, Philip intercepted them. Raoul quickly realized that Philip was struggling against these elite rogues. It was surprising to Raoul that Philip, an expert high-class knight over level 90, was not enough. Checking the stats of these elite rogues, Raoul saw their stats had increased, possibly due to the red tattoo's effect. Even Jake found it difficult to confront the monsters, unlike the earlier ones. Jake asked through the guild chat if he could kill the monsters with a regular sword, since the rapier would only make his life difficult. However, Raoul mentioned the fact Pierce and Philip are still okay with it, but he's the only one complaining. He brought up this plan since Raoul trusted his ability, but it seems they'll have to dial it back. Jake gets riled up after that message, explaining that he thought Pierce was having a hard time. Now he charges toward the enemies with his newfound determination to not be the loser of the bunch. Seeing this, Raoul sighed, deciding he should act too. He approached one of the red monsters, identifying its weak points and defeats it. Jake was shocked by this and wonders how Raoul finds them so easily. The leader of the elite rogues, not expecting to be overwhelmed, questioned who these attackers were. Seeing the rapiers, he concluded they might be from the Randall Viscounty, but doubted it based on their swordsmanship. Jake retorted, questioning why a man about to die needed such information. The leader gets enraged by this insult to the Imperial Hounds. He then spots Raoul, believing he might be the leader, and now, he found a way to survive. He does something that fully transforms his comrades into red monsters, shouting for the Emperor's honor. Raoul, recognizing this as a black sacrifice, was shocked. The red monsters charged at Raoul and his men, delivering powerful punches. Jake blocked with his shield but struggled with the strength of the blows. Raoul knew the black sacrifice was a skill that burned life energy and mana for short-term incredible strength. Judging by this skill's use, Raoul thought they must be planning something. His subordinates warned him to be careful. The leader of the elite rogues donned power armor and charged at Raoul. While that happened, he checked the power armor's capabilities. Philip tried to intercept with a powerful mana sword strike, but it left no scratch on the enemy due to the force field. The enemy ran past Philip, reaching Raoul with great speed and launching a powerful punch. However, the rogue's punch doesn't go through. Raoul's hand suddenly glowed with strands of golden light. Seeing this, the enemy was shocked and questioned if Raoul was a power armor user. Not just a regular one, it's power armor with shifting parts. Recognizing the danger, he decided to finish Raoul quickly. As for Raoul, he planned to dodge using the C-rank skill flash. However, a message on his screen notified him that a hostile power armor had been encountered, waking Regnator. Raoul had the qualifications as a sword expert and middle-class psychokinesis, meeting the minimum requirement to activate Regnator. The golden light solidified into a shining arm armor. However, he didn't have enough mana to complete the activation, and the system searched for other energy sources. The system then informed him that intermediate-grade psychokinesis had been successfully fixed in shape, partially activating the Regnator. Feeling the power coursing through him, Raoul realized he had power armor. This armor has benefits like a barrier blocking all physical attacks weaker than a mana blade, canceling out at least 3 circle magic and increasing mana and physical abilities. However, it's a piece of equipment only for NPCs, and the only way for them to fight against the player's outbursts. But somehow he's acquired that same equipment, creating a shield around him. The enemy, frustrated by the ineffective attacks, readied for a full-force assault. He created a shockwave that broke Raoul's defense. After that, Raoul retrieved his rapier and activated the shooting star technique, breaking the enemy's barrier. However, the rogue doesn't plan on going down alone. The enemy, on the brink of death, activated a power, causing his eyes and body to glow pink. Raoul realized that the enemy is fusing with his power armor. A screen popped up, notifying Raoul that Regnator had detected a forbidden piece of power, and part of a seal due to an oath was being raised. Raoul's body glowed with intense golden mana and light, his eyes turning golden. The mana around him was immense, as Regnator showed its true self temporarily. The intense golden light covered Raoul, forming a giant armor around him, still glowing brilliantly. Raoul was glowing in his golden power armor, exuding mana flames. The enemy was also glowing, his armor fusing into his body, turning him monstrous. With lightning speed, he approached Raoul with a powerful blow. Raoul found the enemy disgusting as he braced for the punch. The impact caused a massive explosion, sending monsters flying and Raoul's men shielding themselves. When the fire died down, Raoul was seen blocking the punch with his armor. He counterattacked, striking the obvious weak spot on the dude's chest. With a few more attacks, the enemy cried out and was defeated. Raoul's power armor disappeared, leaving a golden glove in his hand as it faded into golden light. Raoul fell to his knee, coughing blood. His subordinates rushed to his aid, concerned. Raoul signaled he was okay, though he had never felt this way, even as a player in his past life. Staring at the golden bracelet, he thought he glimpsed eternal power. This time he borrowed the item's power, but he vows to achieve that level of power one day. In the basement, they found teleportation devices and mana stones. Pierce reported finding Nikki and other hostages, but some had died. Raoul ordered his subordinates to gather the belongings of the deceased for their families. Pierce informed him that Nikki was unwell. Raoul decided they should leave quickly. As they were leaving, Jake questioned leaving the items behind, and is against it since they're all valuable items. Raoul acknowledged their value but decided against taking them, knowing it could agitate the Imperial Knights. Raoul promised his subordinates a bonus for their hard work and told them to rest. Jake, excited about the bonus vacation, marched toward the city. Raoul wondered if Jake was stupid or smart. Pierce reported that they had lured their target as planned. Raoul was curious about their target's reaction to the trick. The target here is the 3 Randall brothers, who were frustrated from tracking Raoul and are seeking revenge. They tracked him down to the forest after they mentally healed from their last experience, and even lost their money and swords. At that time, they couldn't use their mana skills in the city. But this time, They were confident they couldn't lose with 12 knights and their leader, Jeremy, having power armor. Their guide led them through the forest. They realized the area looked dangerous but pressed on. They found chests of gold and valuable items, momentarily forgetting their goal. And best of all, they found some power armor. Meanwhile, Raoul and his men approached the city gate. Raoul's subordinates welcomed him with torches, happy to see him. Philip thanked them and reported the raid and rescue in the East Forest. Raoul asked about the others. One replied that they came after the mission. These were Raoul's trainee knights and first guild members. 6 had surpassed the expert level, and the rest were ready to become experts. They were gathering supplies from other hideouts. Raoul now had over 100 members, making it difficult for normal rogues to stand against them. Raoul commanded everyone to proceed into the city. The guards were shocked by their numbers. Raoul, carrying a young girl with blue hair, located the captain. The guard replied they had guided the civilians as requested. Raoul praised their work. The city's people were chattering, shocked by the rescue. Nakia, among the crowd, shouted for her sister. Raoul stepped down from his horse, telling Nakia that Nikki was safe, and she thanked him. Raoul said Nikki needed treatment at the mansion and called Bernard to make arrangements. Bernard confirmed a priest was already at the mansion. Looking around, Raoul thought to himself that he saved the lives of many who were supposed to be dead, changing the future of the alchemists who would have lived only for vengeance. He wondered if Nakia would still be a grand alchemist like before. He worried that the items and potions Nakia was supposed to invent might not even appear in this world because he had changed her future. Raoul thought he still needed Nakia for the county's future, and acknowledged that everything started to change when he came back to the past. He didn't care if history changed and wouldn't hesitate to take away someone's future. Raoul no longer considered himself a kind person. Even today, he could have saved more people if he had acted faster, but he chose to focus on the quest and gain Nakia's interest. He still completed the quest overnight and saved everyone he could have. Raoul believed the city would be safe now and that the mayor would visit with rewards when the sun came up. Despite his success, Raoul felt uneasy as he watched an old villager cry for her son, who didn't make it back. Seeing this old woman cry made him think about the lower-class people who couldn't pay for commissions. Looking back at his actions, he realized they were entirely for quests and levels. He had never had a conversation with people unrelated to the quests. Despite telling himself he would live in the present when he was reincarnated, he realized he was still just playing around like it was a game. Raoul pondered if simply following system-determined quests was the right path. He realized his plans were based on player Beidou-Yun's perspective, and questioned if this limited his options. He recognized the need to find something unique to his identity as Raoul, a nobleman of Connect, to avoid repeating past failures. As he rode with his men, Raoul asked Philip about the disheartened people they saw. He instructed Philip to provide consolation money and job assistance to those who lost family or had family kidnapped. Raoul felt bad for adding more work for Philip, knowing he came to fight. Philip remarked that the young master's behavior was unexpected, thinking Raoul only stepped in when it benefited him. He reassured Raoul that the others wouldn't mind, unlike some other person. Jake humorously complained at this comment, claiming he doesn't hate doing good things as well. But more importantly, he asked if he would still get days off. Anyway, the crowd cheered for Raoul and Count Ashton. Raoul thought the citizens' support would help when dealing with other guilds. He acknowledged it was calculated and beneficial, and considered staying longer to level up and gain practical experience. Within all the commotion, a hooded man with a gray beard observed Raoul from the crowd. The following day, Raoul met with the mayor. The mayor expressed gratitude, saying he could now take a breather thanks to Raoul. Raoul humbly replied, believing the mayor would have resolved it anyway. The mayor admitted he couldn't sleep after hearing about Mira being targeted by the Empire's forces, and thanked Raoul for his report, which prevented big trouble. Raoul was surprised by the Empire's presence in Mira and commented on their long-term secret operations. The mayor mentioned past missing cases and the treaty limitations on Mira's military capabilities, expressing frustration. According to this treaty, Mira can't have an army. The only thing they can get are guards. Even with that, they're still not allowed to show their full abilities outside the city. The mayor noted that someone from Randall Viscounty claimed credit for destroying the spy's hideout and demanded compensation. Raoul had anticipated this and instructed the mayor to let Randall Viscounty take credit. Although unhappy, the mayor agreed, suggesting Raoul could gain a great reputation and royal reward by claiming the achievement himself. Raoul thanked the mayor for his concern but insisted on his plan, and that is to let the Randall Viscounty attract the Empire's attention. The mayor, wondering about an appropriate reward for Raoul, asked what he wanted. Raoul requested access to the mayor's study, known for its valuable books. The mayor, smiling brightly, granted permission and even offered a book as a gift. Raoul thanked the mayor for his generosity. However, the mayor won't pass this chance to show off how generous he is. The mayor's assistant led Raoul to the study. Raoul was impressed by the collection, recognizing it as a treasury of skill books. He goes around the study searching carefully for the book he wants. Then he spots an interesting one on the bookshelf. Using his psychokinesis, Raoul brought the book to himself. It contained studies of ancient rituals, spells, and mental cultivation methods, identified as a special rank S book beneficial for his psychokinesis skill. Raoul was glad to acquire such an item, recalling his past struggles with spiritual power capacity. He knew the S-rank meditation method would ensure he wouldn't run out of spiritual power this time. Raoul understood that psychic abilities, though seemingly limited at first, would greatly enhance with increased level and power, making it easier to increase his proficiency. Raoul thought about whether he could return to his previous life's level before the full-scale war with the Empire. He believed he could turn the tables and so looked forward to that day with a bright smile. Afterward, Raoul chose a moderate mana ring in the Ronaldo treasury, knowing better treasures awaited in his hometown. He wondered if they should reorganize personally, something he had been putting off. Raoul completed all 70 quests he had gathered in one night. He collected skill books below C rank, rare items, and 50,000 player-only coins. Checking his stats, he was satisfied, realizing his body stats had reached above 65 in 1 month. His mana and spiritual power had exceeded 70. He was confident he was now skilled. Raoul knew superhumans like swordmasters or high-tier psychokinesis users had stats around 90. In his previous life, he reached 90 in willpower and sense. He vowed to raise all his stats to 90 in this life. If possible, he aimed to be the first player to reach 100 in any stat. He believed he had many opportunities in this life, like Regnator, one of the 2 items that followed him when reincarnated. Since his skill dex was unlocked through quests, he knew he could wake up Regnator, his power armor. He was given a quest to undo the next seal by solving 50 quests related to the proficiency of random slot skills. He had no clue how to handle Regnator's power, assuming it was hard to manage the current output. Raoul also unlocked a unique trait called Developer's Analyzing Eye, which analyzed the flow of special energies. He realized this was why he saw NPC information and mana flow. He assumed he got this skill when he subdued the Imperial Hound's demonic energy. He knew that if he followed the same paths as in his previous life, he would need to obtain black magic stone fragments by crossing paths with the Empire. Now, as a player and citizen of Connect, he didn't have to. He knew the scenarios and quests he chose were up to him. He decided he wouldn't be a puppet following the developer's wishes. He would move as he wanted, even if it meant destroying the scenario and quests. The next day, as Raoul sat at his desk, Bernard informed him that Nikki had regained consciousness, and Nakia wanted to see him. Raoul stood up, finished his writing, and followed Bernard to the room where Nakia and her sister were. As he entered, he asked about Nikki. Seeing Raoul, Nakia went on her knees, thanking him and saying she didn't know how to repay him. Raoul told her not to mind, saying he needed Nakia to be stronger since Nikki wasn't fully better yet. He wondered if he should check Nikki's state. Nikki, lying sick on the bed, managed to thank Raoul for saving her. After that, she remained silent. Nakia apologizes for this since her little sister is pretty shy. Raoul doesn't see an issue with that. It's sad to see how she's ill, so he decides to check Nikki closely with his analyzing eyes. As he stared into Nikki's blue eyes, he was shocked to see a pool of endless possibilities. He couldn't believe no one had noticed this about Nikki. He wondered if his eyes were playing tricks on him but knew there was no way his eyes deceived him. Raoul was in shock, realizing that Nikki had great SS potential. Her low stats were due to her illness, and he wondered if he could cure her to reveal her true power. He muttered in disbelief, frozen where he stood. Nakia called out, snapping him out of his shock. Raoul quickly replied that everything was fine and decided to investigate Nikki's illness further. A few days later, Raoul, sitting in his study, felt confident about his progress in Mira. They had found more rogues and traffickers, rescuing around 50 more people, making Mira the safest place. The guildhouse construction was complete, and some members lived there. Many rescued civilians were willing to work for them, bringing in talented workers. Raoul was confident in every aspect. As he was deep in thought, Bernard announced Nakia's arrival. Raoul offered her a seat and asked about Nikki. Nakia replied that Nikki was doing much better, thanks to the priests, and thanked Raoul for his help. Raoul, knowing Nakia wasn't being entirely truthful, smiled and replied courteously. Snapping out of his thoughts, Raoul told Nakia he wanted to talk to her. Nakia asked if it was true that he was leaving today, saying she hadn't properly thanked him yet. Raoul confirmed he was leaving and mentioned his tight schedule. Nakia, looking scared, asked how she could help him. She thought Raoul might be like other greedy nobles she had met. Seeing her expression, Raoul reassured her and handed her some papers. Nakia scanned the papers and was shocked after reading them. It was a pardon letter, stating that all her past sins were forgiven and all charges were dropped. Nakia couldn't believe her eyes, and Raoul smiled, saying it was easily settled with money. Raoul had used a lot of money to get permission from the Alliance, knowing Nakia's worth. As Nakia stared at the pardon with the official seal, she couldn't hold back her tears. She thought about the 5 years of suffering due to mana restriction, something she thought she could never escape. Realizing Raoul had solved it easily, she felt it was arrogant to compare him to other nobles. Tears fell like silver rain. Raoul asked if she was okay with it, and if she could tell him how her mana was restricted. Nakia explained that as a child, her alchemist teacher saw her talent and helped her join the Alchemist Association. She made a name for herself as a young, talented alchemist and mastered 3-circle magic at 13. But misfortune struck with a disease outbreak in her hometown, and she lost her family. Only Nikki was left when she returned. Nikki's situation was dire. She had an incurable disease, likely due to hazardous substances around Nakia. Despite Nakia reaching the 5th circle in alchemy by age 18, she couldn't cure Nikki. Desperate, she broke a taboo by using alchemy on Nikki, keeping her alive with stolen materials. This led to her expulsion from the association and mana constraints placed on her. Nakia and Nikki settled in a safe city where God's blessing helped with Nikki's illness. As she bitterly recounted her story to Raoul, tears fell. Mana restrictions and a sick sister weighed heavily on her. Raoul, seeing her struggle, handed her a blue potion, telling her it would free her. Nakia drank it, and a green aura enveloped her. She felt immense relief, having missed this sensation for 5 years. With her body glowing in mana, Nakia understood Raoul's true intentions. She pledged her loyalty to him, eager to help others as he had helped her and Nikki. Raoul placed his hand on her head, accepting her loyalty. He then handed her papers detailing Nikki's illness, monofilaria. Raoul explained that a great alchemist had documented it, but more research was needed. Nakia vowed to create the perfect cure, holding the papers tightly. Afterward, Raoul stretched, finding the experience still awkward but necessary. Today was a success with Nakia joining him. He knew she would leave a mark in history, confident Nakia would find the cure. In fact, the so-called great alchemist who started the research was Nakia herself. In Raoul's past life, she also battled the same illness, and after a long period of research, she found the cure, although at a great cost. Raoul gave her the defective version of the cure intentionally, hoping she would grow and no longer feel burdened by Nikki. If needed, he could provide the rest of the data. With his plans in Mira complete, Raoul looked forward to his next destination, the capital of the Reuben Kingdom, Metropolis Turium. Excitement filled him as he anticipated what awaited in the vast city. Raoul and his men approached the gates of Turium, the capital of the Reuben Kingdom. Excitement filled the air as they took in the diverse sights and sounds. Jake was especially thrilled, marveling at the different cultures present in the capital. A long queue of people waited to enter the city. Raoul decided they didn't need to wait in line since they were from a county. They had left most of the guild members in Mira, bringing only a small group for easier travel. As they entered the gate, Raoul was surprised by the absence of carriages and escorts. He asked Bernard if the message about their arrival had been sent. Bernard confirmed it had and suggested there might be a mistake. Raoul decided they should move together to the mansion. While walking through the city, Bernard asked residents for directions to the Ashton County mansion, but no one knew its location. A man suggested they check the Noble District. They headed to the Noble District, separated from the rest of the city and guarded by soldiers. At the gate, they inquired about the Ashton County mansion, but the soldiers were unaware of it and refused entry. Raoul was shocked, not expecting his family to be unknown. Jake, angered, shouted at the soldiers, questioning their ignorance about the Ashton family. Raoul reasoned that the lack of knowledge made sense since his father rarely visited the capital. However, he found it suspicious that no one knew about the mansion. Raoul asked Bernard to find the address. Bernard quickly returned with the address, which turned out to be for Baron Gender. Raoul questioned the soldier, who confirmed the address belonged to Baron Gender, a distant cousin of Raoul in charge of foreign affairs. Raoul decided to visit the mansion himself. Arriving at the mansion, a guard questioned who they were. Philip introduced Raoul as Ashton County's youngest son and asked for the foreign affairs officer. The guards demanded an invitation to enter, frustrating Philip. Jake, furious, confronted the guards, demanding to see Baron Gender. Terrified, the guards ran to the mansion, shouting for backup. Raoul told his men to proceed inside. A loud voice ordered them to stop, and a soldier, sword drawn, approached with his subordinates. Philip introduced himself and asked for Baron Gender. The soldier, realizing they were from Ashton County, panicked and apologized profusely. He directed his subordinates to escort Raoul and his men to the reception hall. Entering the grand mansion, Raoul was impressed by its size and grandeur. He noticed music playing and strangers in expensive dresses. Jake asked a guard about the event, learning it was Baron Gender's third son's birthday party. Jake was furious. A large man approached, recognizing Raoul and noting how much he had grown. Raoul, sensing the man's strength, checked his status and found he was only level 50, not even an expert. This confirmed why other families looked down on Ashton and why his father assigned this man to foreign affairs. Raoul couldn't accept the man's condescending attitude. Raoul, with a dismissive look, asked the approaching man if he was supposed to know him. The man, drawing closer, suggested Raoul might have forgotten since it had been a long time. He claimed to be like an uncle to Raoul, akin to a brother to Raoul's father. Raoul expressed doubt, mentioning he had never heard the man's name as an uncle. The man laughed, attributing Raoul's confusion to the complicated Ashton family tree, and suggested Raoul call him uncle. Raoul, seeing through the man's pretense, called Bernard to explain their relationship. Bernard confirmed that Baron Gender was Count Ashton's second cousin and Raoul's third cousin, in charge of foreign affairs at the capital. Baron Gender, hearing this, was visibly upset. He angrily questioned Raoul's manners, implying Raoul's father hadn't taught him respect. Raoul retorted, questioning Baron Gender's audacity and lack of fear of Ashton County. Raoul glanced at Philip, asking how many people outside their direct family could speak comfortably with him. Philip replied that only the Count's younger brother Viscount Austin could. Raoul explained this was to show respect and establish hierarchy. He mentioned that when a Count's child comes of age, they inherit the title of Viscount and some land, including a population of 10,000. Turning to Baron Gender, Raoul demanded to know why he should be disrespected by a cousin he barely knew. The Baron, forced to apologize, acknowledged Raoul's adulthood and promised respect. Raoul, unimpressed, told the Baron he had a lot to explain. Philip questioned the lack of an escort from the gate, despite multiple messages sent about their arrival. The Baron claimed he instructed his men to send carriages, blaming a mistake and the number of guests. Philip asked why the Baron was hosting a birthday party for his son in the main building. The Baron explained it was essential to showcase their presence in the capital, dismissing Philip's concerns as those of a guard unfamiliar with nobility. Philip, though angry, held back because of Raoul's presence. Pierce handed Raoul an invitation found in the yard. Raoul showed it to the Baron, noting it mentioned only the Gender family and was held at their mansion, not Ashton County's main building. The Baron, sweating and shocked, insisted it was just an invitation. Raoul countered, stating the location on the invitation was incorrect for such a grand party. The Baron, irritated, reiterated his earlier excuse and tried to end the argument, claiming it was beyond Raoul's authority. Raoul, knowing the Baron needed Count Ashton's permission, declared himself as temporary Count Deputy and ordered the party to end within an hour, demanding a report on the funds. The Baron, outraged, called Raoul's order a nuisance and questioned his authority. Raoul, certain his father anticipated this scenario, challenged the Baron to obey or face consequences. Raoul warned that he could personally end the party and send guests away. Defeated, the Baron agreed to wrap up the party, though angrily vowed Raoul would regret it. Raoul, unfazed, anticipated only minor reprimands from his father. He remained curious about the Baron's confidence and suspected hidden details about Ashton County's collapse. Raoul hoped to uncover valuable information in the city. Raoul and his men were escorted to a part of the mansion but soon realized they had been taken to the annex, not the main building. The servant, noticing Raoul's displeasure, quickly explained that the Baron wanted them to have a quiet place. Raoul, unimpressed by the excuses, decided to head to the main building instead. Jerking his horsewhip to make a 360-degree turn, Raoul led his men at full speed to the main building. Barging in, he was shocked to find the Baron's entire family living there. With a stern expression, he demanded an explanation. The Baron nonchalantly claimed they were just borrowing the space since it was rarely used by the Count and his family. Raoul, infuriated, ordered the Baron and his family to leave immediately. He threatened to slice off their heads if the mansion wasn't emptied by the end of the day. At the same time, he stripped the Baron of his position. The Baron, full of rage, left without a word. Raoul, observing the Baron's departure, thought it was time to find the materials he needed. Entering the office, Raoul was relieved to find documents related to the management and finances of the mansion still there. He realized the Baron and his family had been complacent, thinking nothing significant would happen overnight. Fortunately, Raoul's background in business administration and Bernard's expertise in mansion matters came in handy. Philip informed Raoul that the Baron had left quietly with his family, taking only necessary clothes. Raoul, skeptical, thought it was obvious the Baron planned to return. He believed it was better to quickly weed out the rotten parts and catch the Baron off guard. Pierce speculated that the Baron might have other backing, but Raoul dismissed the concern, confident in their county's strength. Jake, in high spirits, encouraged Philip and Pierce to explore the mansion and follow the young master's lead. Raoul, smiling, agreed and reminded them to rest as they might need to use their strength tomorrow. Raoul dismissed everyone except Bernard, who stayed behind to help with the search. Bernard confirmed he knew what they were looking for, and Raoul urged him to start immediately. The next day, Raoul and Bernard were seen training, remotely controlling 2 swords each. The swords clashed, shrouded in mana. Bernard, panting heavily, struggled to keep up. Raoul complimented Bernard's improvement. noting his remarkable progress since awakening his superpowers with the skill book. Raoul recognized Bernard's exceptional talent and potential. Raoul admired Bernard's precise handling of weapons, thinking it was remarkable for a wind mage. He estimated Bernard would reach the intermediate level in 6 months and become a rare multi-talented psychic. With his palms covered in flames of mana, Raoul suggested they do some martial arts training, emphasizing the efficiency of combining various skills. Bernard agreed, but then noticed something unusual, glancing towards the mansion and mentioning they had guests. Raoul, with a faint smile, acknowledged Bernard's superior long-distance sensing ability. Raoul suggested they go greet the guests properly and instructed Bernard to bring the items they prepared yesterday. As Bernard put on his butler suit, he thought to himself that something always happened when the young master had that smile. He hoped the Baron wouldn't do anything foolish. Jake addressed the gathered crowd, questioning their large numbers. He noticed some escort knights exuding formidable vigor and soldiers outside the mansion. Jake wondered if their party could handle this alone, and if the young master had another plan. The Baron stood confidently at the center, thinking everything was going according to plan, and that he would secure his position. Raoul saw blood relatives of Ashton County residing in the capital, realizing they had gathered because of the previous night's events. He understood the Baron's issues affected these relatives who benefited from the county's resources. They wouldn't remain silent after losing their benefits overnight. The Baron believed it was a mistake to hold the party in his name and use the office, but he thought Raoul only knew how to act like a noble and considered him naive. With a malicious grin, he intended to exploit the situation. As Raoul walked among the gathered people, some commented on his appearance and relation to them, while others mentioned his accomplishments. Raoul addressed the crowd confidently, acknowledging the large gathering and asking if it was due to the matter with Baron Gender. The Baron confirmed, saying the relatives were angry at Raoul's unreasonable behavior and suggested he apologize. Raoul inquired if the Baron represented everyone and promised to sort out right from wrong. The Baron mocked Raoul, claiming the mansion had been managed by blood relatives for decades and wasn't a playground for a young brat from the main family. The crowd echoed the Baron's sentiments, complaining about the main family's treatment and the Count's subsidies. Raoul realized he wouldn't have time to explain the Baron's actions and focused on the immediate situation. He identified 5 groups present: Ashton County's blood relatives, spies of the Imperial Hounds, knights of the Delamian family, knights of the Randall Viscounty, and family traitors led by Titus, Raoul's eldest cousin. Raoul's father, Count Melvin D. Ashton, had 2 brothers, an older brother, Jaden, and a younger brother, Austin. Among the 3, Melvin was the most talented. Due to primogeniture, Jaden was expected to be the next count, but Jaden was arrogant and violent. If anything bothered him, he would hurt or kill them. One day, Melvin achieved intermediate expert and got more support than Jaden to be the next count. Jaden felt his position was about to be stolen, and out of jealousy, he tried to assassinate Melvin. Though the attempt was stopped and Jaden was caught in the act, he lost his privileges. Over time, Melvin became the count, while Jaden still got the title of Viscount and a large amount of land. However, Jaden could not accept losing his title to his younger brother. He ended up selling his assets to a rival family known as Marquis McNeil and left with his followers. This all happened 15 years ago when Raoul was born. Seeing how Viscount Jaden's son was here, Raoul could tell where Baron Gender's allegiance lay. Raoul knew that people here did not lose anything from the incident 15 years ago, and therefore did not harbor any negative feelings towards Viscount Jaden. He knew these people probably thought they had a chance to push the Count and his family off and take their spot. Raoul remembered that in his past life, the Ashton County split into multiple factions and fell. He wondered if these people were making the right choice, but Raoul knew this was only true if he was not here. Determined to teach the people they made a big mistake and knowing full well what schemes they were planning, Raoul knew it was time to make his move. He addressed the gathered people, saying he had heard enough from them and would like to say something now. He called Bernard and Pierce to hand over the books in their hands to the people. As Pierce and Bernard started handing out the books, the people were confused, wondering what could it be. The title of the book was a report on the management and financial operation of Count Ashton's estate, with attached evidence and investigation materials regarding Baron Gender's embezzlement and misappropriation. Even the Baron was handed one of the books. When all the people opened the books, they were all shocked by the content. The Baron was shocked and nervous, his face filled with horror as he read the book's contents. He quickly protested, saying the book was fake. Even though the book's content seemed legitimate, it was hard to believe that Raoul, who had come the previous day, was now revealing this. Raoul, with a smile on his face, commented that now they should have some real talk. Raoul picked one of the books and opened it, reading that 200 trainees were getting free lessons. He asked the Baron where these people were now. The Baron, looking nervous with cold beads of sweat on his face, replied that the trainees gave up and ran away with the equipment. Raoul asked if all 200 really ran away, questioning if the Baron was saying the trainees were from somewhere else. Raoul noted it was weird how the Baron chose every trainee from outside the capital when the point of free lessons was to gain popularity in the capital. The Baron replied defensively, saying all the trainees ran away, and who he picked was up to him. Raoul agreed, saying since there were addresses in the book, they would find out more about it once they started investigating. Moving on to the next thing in the book, Raoul said it documented that the Baron gave 100 gold swords as presents to other barons. Raoul continued, saying according to the investigated report, all these barons received 10 gold replicas. Another report stated the Baron hired 100 C-rank mercenaries as mansion guards. Raoul asked the Baron where these people were, commenting there was no way 20 F ranks were all the Baron had there. Raoul continued, noting there were frequent parties at the main building, such as celebrations for the Baron's wife's party, the Baron's son's birthday party, hunting ceremonies, and so on. And Raoul doesn't get what all these had to do with using estate expenses. As he listed the atrocities, even Raoul himself was amazed by this and had to stay up pretty late to find all of this. The previous night, Raoul found out that some of the papers were fake. He had to sneak into the Baron's house with Pierce, where they found the real book of accounts using his analysis skills and Pierce's observation skills. Bernard organized them all and put them in a book. Raoul used his document copy skill to make copies of this book, certain that everyone here would now know how much the Baron had embezzled. Breaking the silence, Raoul stated that more than half of the estate expenses were embezzled. He asked if anyone disagreed with firing Baron Gender. The Baron started clapping, saying it was amazing, stating that Raoul really amazed him. He asked how long Raoul had prepared this, then called him a bad person as a nephew. Raoul wondered what the Baron was trying to do. The Baron proclaimed loudly, asking if anyone sensed anything fishy about this book they had been handed. The Baron shouted, saying he had never seen such a thoroughly organized temporary report in his life. He commented that formal investigations might get 2 or 3 pages of the report, but Raoul made a book with 30 pages. Raising the book to get everyone's attention, the Baron commented that his nephew claimed he made this book with 30 pages in a day, saying it made no sense. The Baron continued, saying it was clearly something Raoul made beforehand. He claimed Raoul was trying to fire him and restrain the family in the capital. The people who had gathered supported him, believing the Count would decline support for other families if Baron Gender got fired. They all shouted they would not let this happen. The Baron called one of his servants, Jackson, to bring a paper. He handed it over to Jake, with the Baron saying this was the paper with the list of their requests. He added that if Raoul signed it, they would excuse Raoul for today's disrespect. Jake reads it out loud. The first item on the list requested the ownership of the estate to be transferred to a joint title under the names of Baron Gender and other family members. The second item demanded that the management of the estate, including stewardship, be determined by the family members in the capital. The third item called for the sword skills exclusively shared within the main family to be shared without restriction among the branch family members. Jake loses it after reading this. He commented that everyone gathered had lost their minds. There was no way their requests would be considered. The Baron replied that Jake was really rude, questioning if this was truly what the main family wanted. Jake retorted that everything they had said was nonsense and that they would never get the house. He squeezed the paper containing the requests, calling the gathered people dogs. This upset the Baron, who pulled out a small knife from his suit pocket, asking how Jake dared insult them. This action prompted Raoul's men to draw their swords, and the rest of the gathered people also drew their swords. Raoul told Jake to stop. The Baron knew he stood no chance fighting against the 3 knights with Raoul, fully aware they were the best knights in the Golden Bear. The Baron then demanded that Raoul execute Jake and apologize if he wanted to avoid bloodshed. Raoul nonchalantly said Jake did nothing wrong and told the Baron to stop acting. He remarked that he did not expect the matter at hand to be solved with these papers. Drawing his sword with anger on his face, Raoul commented that he thought the Baron would at least be embarrassed. As Raoul drew his sword, he remarked that he guessed the Baron was a greater person than he thought. Driving his sword into the ground with a powerful force, causing the ground to break, Raoul stated the Baron must know he would never sign such a paper. His eyes burned with rage as he asked the Baron what he really wanted to say. Seeing Raoul's behavior, the Baron was terrified. He thought the youngest son of the Count was the weakest and most talentless. He wondered how this was possible, but was not ready to back down. Loudly, the Baron said there was no use trying to bluff, telling Raoul that he couldn't leave unless he signed the paper. As soon as the Baron said this, all his people who had gathered readied their swords, drawn and ready for battle. Raoul, seeing this, felt a kind of excitement. The Baron advised him to think carefully. Raoul told the Baron that his actions were akin to declaring war against the county. Some of the people who had gathered shouted Baron Gender's name to call his attention, considering him crazy to do such a thing. The Baron turned to them, saying it was too late because they were all in the same boat now. He asked if they really thought the Count would forgive them. Raoul interrupted, asking what the Baron's move was since he wouldn't be signing the paper. The Baron shouted at Raoul, claiming that hundreds of knights and guards would attack Raoul on his call, and asked if the Golden Bear Knights could take on all of them. He had prepared a secret weapon just in case, one that even the Golden Bear Knights wouldn't be able to stand against. Just as he expected, Raoul noticed some of them were just watching, so he stretched his sword out with a confident smile, asking the Baron, "So what?" Raoul's reaction shocked the Baron, leaving him terrified. He realized his approach to scare Raoul with armed soldiers had failed, leaving his secret weapon as the last resort, which could lead to war. Still, he made his move. He picked a golden bear head from his pocket, thinking it would have been easier if Raoul was as weak as the rumors said. The Baron raised the tiny golden bear head in his hand, loudly and angrily proclaiming that he would find justice for Raoul insulting him with fake documents and disrespecting him. He shouted Raoul's full name, Raoul D. Ashton, requesting proof of lineage, throwing the tiny golden bear head in front of Raoul. The people recognized this act, knowing the proof of lineage was a dual request one could use once in a lifetime, the only way to fight against superiors. They were shocked that the Baron was using it here, even more shocked that he was using this duel against his nephew. They couldn't believe the Baron would go to such lengths. Raoul asked if the Baron was serious about this duel, questioning why he would accept the Baron's request. The Baron tells him to consider this his last mercy, saying it would be better than having Raoul's seal taken away forcefully. Raoul smiled, saying the Baron would get the honor of taking away his nephew's seal through an honorable duel. With a face full of rage, the Baron told Raoul to decide quickly, saying if Raoul declined, he would have to use force to take away Raoul's seal. Raoul knew the Baron expected his answer, even though the Baron acted strong. He calmly asked the Baron about the conditions, assuming he would not be the one dueling. The Baron explained that it would be a 3-on-3 duel, and the last one standing wins. Since it was proof of lineage, Raoul would have to pick 3 from the lineage. Philip protests about this, since that will leave Raoul fighting alone. The Baron replied that there were many others of the lineage present, saying if people thought Raoul was right, they could stand on Raoul's side, meaning that gender won't be responsible if no one sides with him. Philip wants to protest further, but Raoul signals him to stop. He figured that he would sign the paper of requests if he lost, and asked the Baron what he was betting. The Baron replied that it did not matter, asking if Raoul wanted anything from him. Since it's a fair duel, the bets should be fair too. So Raoul states that he would take every family's house that had signed the paper if he won. The people gathered were shocked to hear this, shouting in anger, calling Raoul's demand ridiculous. That's how it has to be if Raoul is to duel. The Baron figured this will only make the other families stand against him, although it's not bad for him. If he couldn't get Raoul to sign the paper, those other houses were meaningless. The Baron agreed to Raoul's request for the duel, then asked if Raoul was accepting the duel. Philip was against it, telling the young master there were different ways to handle the situation at hand. Raoul acknowledged his opinion, but had already accepted the duel. Besides, he even received a quest for the duel with an extra objective to win the duel alone. Seeing how nervous Philip was, Raoul asked if he thought he was going to lose. Philip said it wasn't that, just that he was worried there might be unexpected variables. But Raoul permits him through the guild chat that he can interrupt the match if he believes there's a problem. Plus, Raoul is sure his opponent is thinking likewise. Raoul knew quite well that his duel was just for show, knowing Gendar wouldn't accept the consequences if he lost. With that, Raoul accepts the duel. He asked who was going to be the judge, since he didn't want the Baron to be unreasonable after losing. The Baron had this sorted out. He turned to a man with red hair, asking if this man could be the judge. The people wonder who the person is, so Gendar introduces him as the rising star of Reuben Kingdom, Raphael D. Randall Viscount's 4th son. People were shocked by this, with Raoul's knights, especially Jake, ready for combat. Raphael, with a crooked smile, told everyone to calm down, saying he was only there because he was invited, then got caught up in this event. Raoul, with bold confidence, called out Raphael's name, saying he believed Raphael would be a fair judge. Raphael, with a malicious grin, replied of course. With that settled, the representatives took their stands. Raoul stood alone, which was pretty much expected, and this was a much better option for him. Raphael begins the match, and Raoul's first opponent is the Gendar family's 3rd son, Aaron. This was the first representative of the Gendar family in this duel, and he was pretty upset that the Ashton family's weakest crashed his party. He figured was acting confident over winning a countryside tournament and vowed to make Raoul beg. The judge gave the command for the duel to start, and as soon as he did, Aaron leaped, charging at Raoul for an attack. As he swung his sword all the way back, he shouted that Raoul was done for. Raoul was unfazed by this with his sharp blue eyes, and in an instant, all Aaron saw was a blackout. The judge did not seem too happy as he announced that the winner of this round was Raoul. Everyone who had gathered was shocked. All it took was a single strike for Raoul to win, and they couldn't even see it. The Baron was seen angry, calling Aaron a fool for letting his guard down and losing his chance to regain their family's honor. For the next match, a man stepped forward from the Baron's side, volunteering to go next. This man, wearing a shiny golden earring, was known as Baron Kepsi, one of the decent swordsmen in the capital, and the judge was excited for this next round. The judge announced that they should start right away. Baron Kepsi charged at Raoul with his sword, swinging it at him, but Raoul blocked it with his sword. Seeing this, Baron Kepsi complimented Raoul for having nice basics. As he continued to attack, he commented on Raoul's sharp reflexes and could see why Aaron lost in one strike. Baron Kepsi engulfed his sword in some blue mana, thinking this technique was not something he should use against a kid 20 years younger than him, but he had a lot on the line. So he used the bear strike attack and struck at Raoul with all his strength. However, even with that epic blast, Raoul blocked the attack like it was nothing. As the two duelers clash swords, Raoul wonders why on earth his opponent would use a budget version of his family's sword art that he learned more systematically. Since he had more advantage in this art, Raoul couldn't believe how easy it was to block a mana sword. Baron Kepsi, still in shock, monologued to himself that the technique didn't work on the kid. He questioned if it didn't work because it was his family's technique. Despite his shock, Baron Kepsi was not ready to give in. He took a wide swing with his sword, continuing his attack, but Raoul blocked it again. Feeling the pressure of Baron Kepsi's attack, Raoul realized Kepsi integrated another sword art he learned in the capital, and that was a bit better than the last assault. The people supporting the Kepsi were all excited after seeing him drive Raoul into a corner. They mocked Raoul, saying he must think his family's sword arts would work in the capital too. But Raoul finds their mockery ironic. They're the same losers who gave up their jobs due to an inferiority complex and jealousy, making them leave their hometowns to stay in the capital. Raoul continued thinking that there were blood relatives who focused on things other than swordsmanship and headed to the capital with bigger dreams. However, those worthy people were not here. Unlike the losers, such people drew a line between the family and themselves and started their own families. Raoul snapped out of his thoughts and took a firmer grip on his sword, making his hands and sword glow faintly with golden light. He took a quick swing at his opponent, pushing him away. He tells Kepsi if had delved more into the family's sword arts instead of trying to amalgamate different sword arts, he might have overcome the wall. Feeling insulted hearing this from a kid, Baron Kepsi took a full swing of his sword. He finds it ridiculous that some child is advising him who had been mastering the bear crush for the past 15 years. Baron Kepsi unleashed the Tempest Wolf technique on Raoul, forming a huge giant wolf that opened its fangs widely, ready to swallow Raoul. The people gathered in support of Baron Gender were happy to see the display of power by Baron Kepsi from the Templeton family, cheering him on and believing he would win. But that's not what's going to happen. With a single swing of his sword, Raoul slashed through the Tempest Wolf, and Baron Kepsi was so shocked he couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Raoul charged towards Kepsi, lecturing him that what was important was not what kind of sword art one learned, but how well one learned that sword art. Baron Kepsi became more irritated, believing Raoul wouldn't stand a chance with such a basic sword form. Suddenly, Raoul's sword changes trajectory, evading Kepsi's defense and slicing his leg. This made Baron Kepsi very confused, wondering what sword form the kid just used. But Raoul was not done. He prepared for another attack while Kepsi tried his hardest to predict Raoul's attack. Then Raoul attacks, allowing Baron Kepsi to realize the attack was the 8th form, horizontal slash. He successfully defends and goes back to predicting Raoul's next move. But at this point, he couldn't tell his opponent's next move since Raoul was switching sword forms so quickly that he couldn't react. As Raoul hit him with another powerful sword attack, Baron Kepsi was surprised at how Raoul was connecting various sword forms. It was general knowledge that sword art consisted of sword forms, and these sword forms combined basic sword styles such as horizontal slash, vertical slash, and stabbing. However, it was easy to see through these sword forms, so it's pretty common to change them by linking different sword techniques. As Raoul slices up the Baron, Kepsi realized that this connection was happening several times in a short period, and it was so perfect that it was unpredictable. In an instant, Raoul's sword slashes Kepsi's hand, making him drop his sword. Then he points his sword at the man's neck, showing him that he didn't need any fancy techniques to win. The once confident and bold Baron Kepsi was now nervous and terrified. As Baron Kepsi fell to his knees in defeat, he thought to himself that with this level of visual acuity, reaction speed, and judgment, sword arts were not important. Then he finally collapsed to the ground. The judge declared Raoul the winner of this round. The people who had gathered, excited moments ago about Baron Kepsi, were now in shock, mouths agape, including Baron Gender. According to what he heard, Raoul had not learned swordsmanship properly. Despite the shock, Baron Gender still had confidence in the last contestant who would go up against Raoul. The people who had gathered to support the Baron got excited again when they realized who the last contestant was. The judge announced that he would call the last contestant to the front. He thought the whole thing was pretty entertaining because he got to watch the Ashton family eat away at their own flesh. He did want the little kid Raoul to lose, but honestly, who won had nothing to do with him. A huge man stepped forward with his sword on his shoulder. The judge noticed the man, recognizing him as Dave. The judge remembered that this huge man, the eldest son of Baron Gender, was not exactly a memorable one. But to Raphael, all this didn't matter. He just wanted Raoul to struggle until the end. The judge announced that the third match would now begin. As this huge man, named Dave, stepped closer to Raoul, he was carrying a huge heavy sword on his shoulder, moving forward with thick, intense mana. Raoul took a fighting stance, his eyeballs glittering with golden light. He didn't expect the Gender family to put in this much effort. Dave addressed Raoul as a little kid, telling him to give up on the match while he was still being nice. If not, he claimed he would cut off Raoul's limbs with the huge sword in his hand. He also told Raoul that if he planned to deal with him using those stupid sword arts, it would be a good idea to quit now. People saw this large mana sword and praised Dave for his expertise. However, Raoul doesn't care about what nonsense he has to say, telling him to bring it on, and thinks, half. So, according to Raoul's request, Dave swings his sword at his opponent. Raoul defends against it and in an instant goes for a stab. But Dave blocked this counter. Dave deflects Raoul's sword, saying he is good at attacking while making noises as a distraction. As Raoul blocked Dave's attack, he wondered about the physical increase of Dave's buff, and how long would it last. As Dave continued his assault, Raoul realized the buff didn't last long. On the other hand, Dave was getting frustrated about how much Raoul kept blocking. He took a full swing with all his might, directing it at Raoul. But Raoul used his sword to stand against this powerful attack. After the attack, Raoul realized the attack cracked his blade. He knew from his past life that if an intermediate mana sword user collided with an expert blade, an average sword was bound to break. This confirmed Raoul's earlier suspicion about Dave's sword not being a real mana blade. Raoul thought to himself that they had seen everything Dave could do. Now it's to wrap up the fight. In an instant, Raoul took a leap that made him move faster than a speeding bullet. He moved past Dave the fake expert/Empire's dog, telling him it was now over. Dave calls Raoul an arrogant brat for saying this. The two of them clash swords, and Raoul's sword is shattered on the spot. But Raoul did not give in because of this. Instead, he aimed a powerful blow and landed it on Dave's face, causing Dave to lose his balance. Raoul then prepared another blow to end everything, and he landed a direct hit on Dave's face, which sent him flying across the hall. Everyone was shocked by the results, and Raoul called the judge's attention. So Raphael reluctantly declared Raoul the winner. Raoul, looking at his broken sword, commented to himself that it was unfortunate because he liked the sword. His men congratulated him, telling him he had done a nice job. Raoul replied, telling them it wasn't that hard. Raoul then instructed Philip to arrest Dave, saying that Dave had the Empire's stigma on his body. Philip replied, agreeing that Dave's movements also seemed unusual from his perspective. Pierce informed the young master that he had brought an extra sword and handed it to Raoul. As Raoul collected the sword, he wondered what to do next. Baron Gender couldn't believe what had just happened to Dave, considering Dave was still a sword expert even if he had bent the rules. He couldn't figure out why his son Dave was lying down defeated instead of Raoul. In a frenzy, the Baron shouted that Raoul must be a fraud and must have done something, declaring the duel cancelled. Realizing everything was falling apart, the Baron's only way out was to hold on to those papers, thinking it was the only way he could stand next to Jaden or the Randall family. He commanded everyone to take the papers from Raoul since they had reached the point of no return. Raoul and his men remained unfazed, as Raoul had expected this move. So he instructs his men to play along, and Jake has been waiting for this moment. Out of nowhere, a group of young guys volunteered to protect Raoul and his men. As for who the unexpected visitors are, they're the servants, and they're all for Raoul. The group of servants stood their ground as Baron Gender's troops attacked, vowing not to let anyone pass them to the young master. While Raoul was busy trying to figure out what was happening, Gender was furious about the servants' betrayal. However, their actions were justified since Gender took away the donations meant for them. The servant continued, saying they had hated the county only because they didn't know it was the Baron who was stealing the donations meant for them. If it wasn't for Raoul, they would have gone through this unfair treatment forever. These servants were people recommended by Ashton County to enter the Royal Academy because they did well in the coming-of-age tournament. They got scholarships from the county to go to the academy, and since the academy's dorms were closed during the break, they had to stay in the mansion. Their living expenses were supposed to be subsidized during the break, but Baron Gender took away their allowances and used them as servants to save on employment costs. Jake couldn't believe all this, commenting that the Baron was crazy to do so much to steal, saying it was no wonder the Baron wanted to keep being in charge. Raoul commented that they gave power to the wrong person, saying he didn't think it was like this in the beginning. Jake asked the young master what they should do, telling him someone would get hurt if these people really started fighting. Raoul told Jake not to worry, saying a certain someone would soon arrive. Jake, shocked to hear this, asked who that was. Suddenly, everyone's attention in the hall was directed to the door, which seemed to be forced open by a giant man with guards running away in fear. The soldiers of the Baron, seeing this giant man, began to shout that they were in trouble. As this person crushes a soldier under his foot, the giant man, built like prime Arnold Schwarzenegger with a giant sword, is looking for who's causing trouble. The Baron and his people recognize this man as Dylan, the Count's heir, and wonder why he's at the mansion. Several elite-looking soldiers follow as he marches forward. A soldier stands his guard in fear, but that's obviously a big mistake. He sends the dude out the window, telling him to stay down. Of course, this is only possible since he's the strongest in the kingdom. Dylan scanned around, asking where the kid he was looking for was. His eyes lock on Raoul, who believes he might be in for a bad time. Dylan stabs his sword into the ground and heads to Raoul. But plot twist. He lifted Raoul up, shouting in excitement that he was happy to see his youngest brother, asking how Raoul was doing. Even though the brotherly reunion is nice, Raoul tells his brother to let him down, saying he was getting dizzy from all the swinging. Dylan put Raoul down, telling him he had grown a lot in the last 2 months. But that wasn't enough. Dylan suggested that Raoul has to gain some muscle as well. And Raoul, with an uninterested face, asked his eldest brother if he came all the way from home without a shirt. Dylan replied yes, saying clothes felt uncomfortable nowadays, and it felt nice showing his muscular body to everyone in the capital. Raoul couldn't believe the Count's heir would do something like walking around the capital without a shirt on. Suddenly, Dylan patted Raoul's head, telling Raoul that no matter what, a man had to stay healthy. Dylan said if Raoul had a wonderful body like his, the clowns who had gathered here wouldn't have even tried to pull out their swords against him. Dylan then faced the people who had gathered with the Baron, asking if they were now ready to end what they had started, questioning what gave them the bravery to pull out swords in the Ashton mansion. The armored knights who came with Dylan surrounded every one of the Baron's soldiers. Raoul knew the situation was finally over, but wondered what his eldest brother was thinking by bringing the vice-captain and all high-ranking knights here, resulting in 25 intermediate sword experts who could easily destroy the Baron's family. The Baron realized he was in big trouble with the turn of events. The advantage he was trying to take had turned against him, and he was now done for. Looking around, the Baron saw he was truly alone. He spotted Randall's fourth son, Raphael, who was hiding and observing the situation in the hall. Even the Brennan Republic Knights, whom the Baron had as his secret weapon, had turned away from him. The people he counted on were now useless. Dylan saw Raphael hiding and shouted, surprised to see Randall there. He told Raphael to come and greet him since he was like a brother. Raphael came forward, saying it had been a long time since they last met, while Dylan almost crushed his shoulder. After Raphael reminds Dylan he's the fourth son, Dylan asks him if he still took advantage of the kids with his third and sixth siblings. Raphael shouted that it was not so, saying it was a long time ago. Dylan's face suddenly turned scary, asking if Raphael was getting mad at him. Raphael shivered, replying it was not so. Dylan told Raphael it seemed like he had his fun today, and that they would be able to talk if Raphael continued like this. He dusts his shoulder, telling him it is now a family problem and wanted Raphael to stay out of it. Dylan asked what Raphael's response to this was, but Raphael quickly replied he had things to do at home, telling Dylan to do what he wanted. As Raphael was leaving, Dylan told Raphael to tell the first son of Randall to come see him if he ever wanted to duel. With that, Dylan tells the strangers of the family to leave. However, he orders whoever drew their weapon to stay. Glancing at Baron Gender, Dylan told him they had to talk. He gets to that, asking where the paper the Baron wanted Raoul to sign was. That night, Raoul and Dylan were seen drinking tea. Raoul thanked his eldest brother for coming and suggested that Dylan overdid it. Raoul pointed out that he brought the vice-captain and many other knights, resulting in so many people, and wondered about his brother's wife and son. Dylan laughed loudly, saying he had to bring the best soldiers since his youngest brother asked for help. Raoul replied, saying he still thought it was too much. Apparently, Raoul contacted his brother last night, and Dylan must have hurried to gather everyone and come to the capital. Dylan replied, saying it was easier to sort things out because he came. Raoul knew Dylan was right because if it weren't for Dylan, the situation would have been much harder. Thanks to the portal, Dylan was able to get there very fast. Raoul knew it must have cost Dylan around 3,000 gold to get everyone there through the portal. Deciding to stop overthinking, Raoul asked what Dylan was going to do about the people who had been arrested, as there were over 30 people. Dylan replied that these people would pay for their sins. Raoul reminded his eldest brother that these people were still their father's brothers. asking if Dylan thought their father would be okay with punishing these people. Dylan smiled, saying their father didn't say anything, so this was their chance to get rid of the people who had caused problems. It was because of these same people that their funds ran out. Hearing this, Raoul realized it was his brother who planned this. He remembered that the cafe link also said Dylan Ashton was very political and good at calculations. Raoul realized his eldest brother was overpowered, having brains and brawn. Dylan patted Raoul's head, figuring that his younger brother was worried he might kill the prisoners. But he reassures him, saying he was only going to cut their funds, and is proud of the good work Raoul put in. Raoul, trying to stay in the shadow, believes all he did was just run straight into some pretty annoying people. Dylan gave Raoul a hug, reminding him of how he came up with the report, and also beat them in the duel. But Raoul protested, telling his brother to show this affection to Levy instead since he's a full-grown adult. Dylan wanted to, but his wife wouldn't let him embrace his daughter. But Raoul doesn't blame his sister-in-law because Dylan may just crush poor Livy. Moving on, Raoul has something to tell his brother. He passes the paper record of his and Baron Gender's proof of lineage, asking what he should do with it. Dylan, looking at the content of the paper, commented that the houses of all 27 people who asked for Raoul's stamp were now in Raoul's possession. This meant that these houses now belonged to Raoul, and he could do as he wanted. Raoul was shocked to hear this since that's at least 100,000 gold. Raoul had thought the family would take care of it since it was a family dispute. Dylan continued telling Raoul this was the reward he earned by fairly dueling against these people, saying these houses were rightfully Raoul's. He told Raoul not to worry about his or the family's opinion, telling Raoul a man has to be confident. He hands over the documents, telling Raoul to be more confident as a son of Ashton. Raoul, happy to hear this, grabbed the paper and replied he would try to be a confident man. He asked his brother for a favor, asking if Dylan could take care of these properties for him except for Baron Gender's house because he wanted to use it. Raoul did this because he knew the value of these properties was different depending on who was holding them, and it would be quite the work to sell them all. Dylan collected the papers and assured Raoul that he would take care of the properties. He then told Raoul he would teach him something as a reward, telling him to see him in the morning. And that lesson is how to get ripped like Dylan, asking if Raoul was thrilled and excited to learn. Raoul says yes after a button drops into his tea. Dylan expected nothing less, saying their father and Lawrence were also curious about this secret, but he would only teach it to Raoul. Raoul is actually curious of how he builds his muscles. He remembers the hellish month he spent training with his brother and vowing never to train with Dylan again. Soon the day of the academy admission came. As Raoul stepped into his horse carriage, the mansion's servants wished the young master to be safe. Bernard wished the young master great results on his placement exam. Raoul replied that he would go easy on it, saying there was no reason to go too hard on a children's test. Dylan asked if Raoul was really going to go easy, and Raoul replied yes, asking if there was a need to try hard. Dylan, smiling, said he would go back when Raoul's admission was over, telling Raoul not to worry about him and to do what he wished. Raoul was shocked by his brother's casual reply, having thought Dylan would tell him to try his best. His plan was to go easy on the entrance exam and just graduate from the academy since it was not his true purpose. He knew trying to fit in with the kids would only tire him out, which is why he decided to go easy. After Raoul and his companions made their way to the academy compound, Raoul commented that it was pretty busy. Dylan replied that this year was special because people who delayed their admission were all here now. Hearing this, Raoul was bothered, wondering if something had happened and if the cafe link didn't have any information about the academy. He also got the list of nobles expected to enter this year and was quite sure something was happening. However, he wasn't expecting too much from academy life, so he shrugged it off. Shortly after, it was announced that a few members of some big families were admitted, including Raoul. Raoul was shocked to hear this, so he turned to Philip since he assured him there would be no lineages of warrior families this year. Philip replied there was no news about this when they left Mira. Raoul realizes he didn't get any news because he spent a month training with his brother, so he gets the feeling something's up and asks Dylan for an explanation. However, Dylan leaves it as a secret for him to find out and congratulates him on his admission. Seeing his brother's behavior, Raoul was sure something was going to go wrong, but he proceeded inside the academy hall. There, he told Jake and Pierce to go around and gather some information, including information about the test center. Raoul knew the whole thing would be a pain. He thought to himself that there were supposed to be easy participants, but he could recognize many higher-up nobles. Even with these changes, Raoul still decided to proceed with his plan. Shortly, it was announced that the admission ceremony would begin shortly. One of the academy instructors addressed everyone present, welcoming them all to the Reuben Kingdom Academy, and then introduced the staff members. Raoul was sure he didn't need to pay attention because he had already researched the staff members and knew the academy hardly recruited new staff members. However, Raoul's shocked by who gets presented, Alfredo Gray. Raoul recognized this old man as one of the 3 sages on the continent and the 8th Circle Archwizard. He pondered heavily why such a man would be here, at the academy. The old man introduced himself to the applicants as Gray, the temporary vice president of the academy. Raoul recognized this old man as the 8th Circle Archwizard, known for his unparalleled illusion and vision magic, as well as his alchemy skills. This left Raoul wondering why such a distinguished person had come to the academy. Raoul remembered from his past life that Gray was known for wandering around and had earned the name Nomadic Sage. Even the Gray Tower had to request their own master's location from the Information Guild. Seeing such a person now as the vice president of the academy was unexpected for Raoul, knowing this wasn't supposed to happen based on the information he possessed. According to Raoul's information, this old man was supposed to show himself after the alliances were formed. The vice president, Gray, announced that the academy would include vision magic training in the curriculum and that it would be part of the placement exam. Next, the principal, Pence D. Templeton, echoed the vice principal's statement about the curriculum change. So the students were required to pay attention to the materials that would be shared. Raoul was still not convinced about this and planned to go easy on the exam. The principal continued, saying there would be a special reward for one outstanding student in the placement exam, wishing all the applicants good luck. Hearing this, Raoul was intrigued by the special reward, thinking the exam was just for dividing classes, and had never heard about a reward. At this moment, his screen popped up with a quest where the goal was to get into S-class through the placement exam, with an extra objective to be at the top in the exam. Raoul believed that this quest was not hard. Based on the information he possessed, the Academy's sword department had 5 classes, S, A, B, C, and D, with the top 60 of the 600 students getting into S-class. Raoul believed this would be easy for him. He wondered if it was worth standing out and being the very top student in the S-class. He reasoned in his mind that he didn't even know the reward for being the top student in the exam, and convinced himself there was no need to go for it. It was at this moment Jake handed Raoul a paper stating the top student perks. Seeing these benefits, Raoul realized that these benefits of having a training center and the library are insane, and is now motivated to get to the top. He knew the Academy's lectures increased skill mastery, but couldn't give 1 experience points or any rewards. The reason Raoul chose to visit the Academy was to meet an important person outside his homeland. Other than that, he'd rather be hunting monsters or exploring dungeons. However, things would be different if there was vision magic installed in the training center because, even though every summoned monster was fake, he could still get experience points from defeating them. The only problem was the cost to maintain the magic. But since it was free to the top student, Raoul realized he wouldn't have to worry about it. As for the library, it was full of hidden pieces, knowing he could get hidden quests and skill books with the right information. Even though the floors were locked for years, he knew he could enter all of them. These thoughts got Raoul excited because he had thought he would have to wait at least 3 years to fully use the Academy facilities. But this new development would save him time. He knew this would only happen if he got to the top of the exam and result. The principal announced that the test would be starting soon, telling all the freshmen to gather at the plaza. Raoul was very excited to take this test, convinced it would be easy. As he was making his way to the plaza, a boy with red hair called out to him. Raoul spots him, and that red hair allows him to identify the boy as a Randall. Raoul asked who this boy was, telling the red-haired boy he looked more like a kid than him since he was shorter and tinier than him. The boy seemed offended by this, saying Raoul was so arrogant just like the rumors said. He added that this was why people called the Ashtons rude and creepy. Raoul turned away and began to leave since he's busy. The boy orders him to stop once again, but this time, Jake intercepts, warning the child to back off. The boy got more furious, ordering Jake to move away from his path. One of the bodyguards of the red-haired boy approached the boy, points the number of people present and advises against making a scene. After that, the boy angrily commented that Ashton kids always creeped him out, promising to show Raoul his place. But Raoul doesn't care about what the brat has to say. Raoul could see that every family had people cheering for them, especially the families with big names like Templeton, McNeil, and Randall. Raoul figures there are many students from these families with great influence in the Academy, so he had an idea of how this place was run. Jake seemed to really like it here because of the ladies. One quick glance from Philip changes his main reason for being at the Academy. Raoul and his men noticed a shy man holding a small paper saying, "Good luck to young Master Raoul." Jake was angry at this, seeing how this man shyly held the paper meant to cheer Raoul up. Jake commented that he couldn't believe people were falling behind in a situation like this. He told the young master that he would go and take care of the situation, wishing the young master good luck as he marched passionately away. Raoul decided to check the exam instructions and freshman list. Seeing this list, Raoul was shocked, wondering why some people well known in his past life were on this list, especially Dalton from Templeton and James from McNeil. He remembered these two would reach the master level in 10 years, realizing these people wouldn't be easy to compete with. The instructor addressed the students gathered at the plaza, announcing that the first test would begin soon and directing them to the small auditorium. As they made their way to the auditorium, Raoul thought to himself that the other students were still kids, feeling sorry for them because the top spot was his. They arrived at the small auditorium where the placement exam started with a written test. Raoul didn't have to study for this because the Cafe Link and system community provided all the information he needed. After the written test was complete, the students were led to the second test, a physical test where they were told to enter the gym in groups. As Raoul entered with the other students, they realized they had entered a mana restriction field, causing some to panic. The invigilator explained it was solely a test of physical strength and mana use was not allowed. The invigilator called the students up one by one to hit a punching machine, recording their scores on a board. The scores seemed to average between 1,000 and 1,500. Raoul believed this wasn't very high. As the next student walked up to the machine, Raoul recognized him, having a stamina stat of 43 and strength of 50, placing him in the top 5 of his group. Raoul was eager to see his score. The student punched the machine with all his strength, scoring 2250. This amazed everyone, including Raoul. This score was from McNeil, making him the first student to score over 2,000. He thought if this guy could get 2250, he could calculate how to approach his tests and is ready for the challenge. The exam council observing the test were all seated inside a room around a table, watching the exams proceed through a screen. Since they are in the Kingdom of Knights, the scores are pretty high in general, and the quality of freshmen was pretty high compared to past years, attributing this to the allure of Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray, with a smile, remarked that it was impressive for students below the age of 20 to score over 1,000. The old man added that the students at Leslie Kingdom Academy would be frightened if they found out about this. The principal, feeling flattered, thanked Mr. Gray for his praise and mentioned that Leslie Academy mainly dealt with magic. Another council member expressed his curiosity about what made Mr. Gray come to this academy, since they weren't expecting anyone. Gray replied that he came because he wanted to see how his newly developed magic circle worked in person. He added that it might sound like he was using students as experimental subjects. The principal quickly reassured everyone that it wasn't so and that they were thankful to Gray for allowing them to implement it. Looking at the young students made Gray glad, and is aware that many students were from warrior families. The principal confirmed this, saying it was what everyone in the room was interested in. As they looked at the screen, they saw the red-haired kid from earlier. The principal pointed out the star student, Caleb, the 13th son of Randall, who was trained by Viscount Randall himself due to his outstanding talent. Caleb was granted admission based on recommendation. Gray replied that he looked forward to Caleb's performance in the test. When it was Caleb's turn to punch the machine, he punched so hard that he scored 3,005, making that the highest score. Every council member was amazed by the performance, acknowledging that Caleb was built different. The principal announced that the next person taking the test was James from Marquis McNeil's family, Lord Clifford's direct grandson. Apparently, the Order of Chivalry wanted him thanks to his talent, which was said to be beyond the level of the academy. Without further ado, James landed his powerful blow on the machine, scoring 3,500 on his first hit and 3,612 on the second. All the exam panels at the table could not contain their shock since James just surpassed 3,500 both times he punched, with 3,612 now being the highest score ever recorded by a freshman. Even Gray applauded this, pointing out that the Knights barely scored above 3,000 when the machine first came out. The next person in the queue was Dalton, a swordmaster's grandson, and this was his first public appearance. Dalton punched the machine and recorded a first score of 2,900. A council member was shocked by this, while another asked what was wrong since it was lower than the previous score. However, what's interesting is that Dalton hit the machine with one arm behind his back in a stylish manner. Dalton hit the machine again, still with one hand behind his back, stylishly, and this time scored 3,008. The principal had forced Dalton to join the academy even though he didn't seem happy about it, hence his nonchalant behavior. This begs the question of what would happen if he hit the machine seriously. He commented that it was just as expected of Templeton, who held the title of the strongest fits. Count Randall suggested they go for a meal since they already knew the rankings and there was no need to keep watching. Gray replied, saying he was pretty sure there was one more left from the famous families. Before the old man could mention the person, Count Randall says they didn't need to watch him. According to the rumors, he wouldn't have made it to the academy without his family's recommendation. Plus, he's only 15. This boy is Raoul, and the council members were shocked to hear this, asking how a 15-year-old child could survive since most freshmen were around 19. Count Randall laughed, saying some students gave up on graduating from the academy and only came for the experience. He added it was unfortunate for a warrior family to undergo such shame. Out of nowhere, Dylan, who had been sitting in silence all along in the room, draws everyone's attention. Count Randall wonders who this man is, but Gray seems to have met him earlier. Dylan began to approach them confidently, saying it was an honor that Vice President Gray remembered him. With a body and intimidating face like Dylan's, there was no way Gray would forget. Anyway, Gray was curious about why Dylan laughed, asking why. Dylan replied with a smile, saying it was funny hearing old man Randall blabber in a manner one would call egotism. He asked if Count Randall ever thought the reverse might be the case with Raoul, suggesting Raoul came here early because he had nothing to learn from the academy. Count Randall leaps onto the table, informing Dylan that no one had ever graduated from the academy before 20, and that there was no way this 15-year-old kid could do it. Dylan teased Count Randall, basically saying, "Never say never." But Count Randall calls Dylan arrogant, asking if Raoul could leave a mark on the academy's history. However, Dylan's no prophet, so he doesn't know. But he's still curious about what's going to happen. As these two continued exchanging words, the principal stopped them, telling them not to embarrass themselves in front of their guest. Anyway, the council watched as Raoul stepped forward for the second test. One of them remarked that it seemed like his face was glowing, and another asked if Dylan and Raoul were really brothers. Dylan confirmed, saying that Raoul was their family gem. While the talk goes on about Raoul's good looks, Count Randall gets irritated by the comments, telling everyone to be quiet. Dylan already knew that old man Randall was trying so hard because he had an idea of Raoul's skills due to the barren gender incident. Knowing that old man Randall was trying to turn the council members' attention to his son, Caleb, Dylan was worried about Raoul. He wondered if Raoul was really going to take the test easy, just as he said earlier. Raoul steps forth and punches the machine. The council members were in shock. Even the principal was willing to give Raoul a perfect score for that. Raoul scored 29.99 on his first try, and that was pretty impressive, considering how old Raoul is. As Raoul was getting ready for the next score, the council members cheered him on from their room, saying he should not be discouraged by his age. Raoul punched the machine again and the crowd goes wild. Dylan was proud of his little brother as he managed to score 36.15, which is 3 points higher than the highest score. Seeing this, he figures it was all planned out and considers him a clever guy. After Raoul landed his blow, he was relieved that everything went according to his plan. The invigilator told Raoul to get back to his seat. He walks away while everyone's speechless from his performance, and takes a seat. From there, he reads the report given to him through the screen that popped up. It informed him of the different highest scores. Then he gives an instruction to keep track of the students with scores over 2,500. With that settled, he wondered if anyone noticed that he was overpowered. When Raoul reached the level of an expert, his physical strength grew exponentially. The extremely strenuous training that his brother made him go through raised his strength stat to 68. Raoul knew deep down that he could have easily scored 4,000, but he knew he had to match the freshman level so that he wouldn't stand out too much. This is why Raoul needed to gather information about the strength levels of other freshmen, so that he could pretend he was doing his best. Raoul used psychokinesis to reduce the impact when he punched, and had to use calculations from the game system to ensure he hit the right spot. He did this because the real danger to this world was still unknown, and he deemed it better to hide as much as he could. His plan was to hide his true strength before the other players show up, since people would find his power strange. Raoul showed off his power as rank 1 in his last life. As a result, the guilds analyzed his skills and hunted him for them, causing him to run until he eventually lost his life. He had no intention of making that mistake again. This time, he'll be the one hunting down any show-offs. The invigilator announced that the first test was almost over, and that the students should prepare for the next one. Raoul checks his stats and learns that the next test is the obstacle course. The test is based on strength and agility, so Raoul figures he'll have to control himself. He also hoped Dalton and James would do their best this time because he wanted to see where he stood. Raoul knew from his past life's memory that being a descendant of the Swordmaster family was a blessing, but also came with a fair share of responsibilities. Duke Marquis never forced his children to learn the way of the sword, but his children wanted to keep the #1 title, so they did their best. All this pressure to be the best caused Dalton to be unhappy. He was better than most people his age, but it also stressed him out because Dalton had a carefree personality. Dalton chose to enter the academy to get away from the boring training he underwent every day at home. In the present moment, Dalton questions why there was a test on the first day as a freshman and why everyone was so loud. When the test results of the second test were posted, Dalton wondered why James was in second place, which was not what he expected. Dalton had always won against James every time, but he knew James was his best opponent so far. Dalton stared at the test position board, seeing Raoul D. Ashton in the first place, and couldn't believe someone was better than James. This piqued his interest, making him more curious about Raoul. The invigilator announced that they would now be moving to the next testing site, telling the students to line up. Meanwhile, Dalton wonders about Raoul, until he finally meets him. Raoul asks who the stranger is. The blue-haired kid replied, saying he was Dalton. Looking at Raoul, he felt like he just saw a glimpse of a golden shine in Raoul's eyes, realizing that Raoul was really good-looking, but he believed Raoul was nowhere at his level. Since there is nothing important to say, Raoul takes his leave. Dalton was shocked by this, realizing it had been a while since he had been rejected. People always spoke to him more when they knew who he was. This fresh reaction made Dalton more curious about Raoul. A gentle smile spread across his face as he wondered what kind of face Raoul would make when he lost to him in the next test. All the students moved to the site of the second test. Raoul knew this test was quite simple because it was to check how fast one could run through the obstacles. The major challenge was that the students had to run with a full-body set of steel armor, and there were also a few traps placed in the way. The invigilator started calling out to students to take this last test by their assigned student numbers. In no time, 100 people had already failed this test, which was bothersome to Raoul. Even though there were low-ranking students present, he remembered hearing the exam council change something in the test when Vice President Gray came. This made Raoul wonder what had been changed to cause so many to fail. Some students started passing, with the first student who passed having a time of 13 minutes 35 seconds, and the second having a time of 12 minutes 52 seconds. Later, a student passed with a time of 9 minutes 12 seconds, making this the best time so far. Dalton, who had been asleep at the test site, figured it was his turn next as he yawned and approached the test arena. Before Dalton took his test, the best score across all test sites was around 7 minutes. Raoul kept monitoring the scores across all the test sites, and then Raoul was called upon to take his test. The invigilator explained the rules, saying all the traps and obstacles were illusion spells, but the damage would be the same as if it were real, and it would be recorded. The invigilator continued, explaining that if the damage recorded exceeded the armor's capacity, the person would be disqualified. With that, he was given the command to begin, and Raoul launched himself forward. As Raoul ran and charged forward, he realized the full-body armor he was wearing was very old and heavy, making it hard to move in. He could see why so many students failed at the beginning, but it was not a problem for him since he had grown stronger after reaching the expert level. As Raoul proceeded, he encountered obstacle number 1, which was a torrent. Raoul knew this was an illusion spell, but it looked very real to him. He wondered how many mana stones must have been used to set this up. He couldn't believe such an elaborate installation was set up for the admission test. He saw it as a waste, as he easily avoided the first obstacle. The next obstacle was forest traps. Raoul ran really fast along the path of the forest and stepped on a pressure plate. As a result, some arrows were fired at him, but he dodged them. After that, he makes his way avoiding the ground spikes, and successfully blocks a bunch of daggers that were shot at him. Within the commotion, he checked his messages, and what he saw made him enter the speed of light. He was informed that James and Dalton were going very fast and would pass the test in around 5 minutes. Then there's also Caleb from Randall, but he wasn't on the other two's level. Raoul told his informant to keep updating him on James and Dalton. By now, Raoul had come to a swinging bridge and a cliff. He recognized fireball shooters on the other side and figured they'd be annoying, but he made up his mind that he wouldn't let this stop him as he drew his sword. Raoul charged forward at full speed. As he was running, he noticed the sudden wind current which caused the bridge to shake. He began losing balance just as the fireball shooters launched different fireballs at him. Seeing the incoming fireballs, he knew he was going to fall. However, Raoul could still defend himself. He knew he could easily get out of this difficult spot if he used his mana blade, but he couldn't reveal his powers yet. He sprang forward, swinging his sword at the incoming fireballs. This was enough to get him out of the tough spot and cross the bridge. The only thing left for him was the cave part of the course. As Raoul headed inside the cave, he knew the traps would be harder to dodge and therefore more dangerous. But he couldn't stop, confident that there was always a way around every difficulty. James was also in the cave, with many arrows directed at him. But he used his shield to block the multitude of arrows. Things were getting annoying for him. He asked himself what he was even doing there since it was annoying to attend an academy at his age and deal with inferior students. James's pride stemmed from winning a tournament mostly participated in by people in their 20s and his experience as a Capitol Guard. He saw coming here as a waste of time for him, who was soon to be a knight. He would never have come here if it weren't for his lord's direct orders. The presence of kids like Dalton and Raoul, who were closely competing with him, made everything annoying. Putting the task aside, he found it pretty embarrassing to lose to kids like them. He wondered when the cave would end until he saw a light. Whatever it was, he was determined to move forward, breaking incoming arrows with his shield. Soon he stepped out of the cave and his pastime was recorded as 5 minutes 15 seconds. Seeing this, James was very confident he was the winner of Test 3. Certain that this result would surely put him in the top spot. It doesn't take long until he discovers that Dalton is in first position, having finished with a time of 4 minutes 58 seconds. James was so shocked and frustrated, wondering how such a thing was possible. He believed he wouldn't even be able to get such a score even if the course was a straight line. The man of the hour, however, just saw it as a warm-up. James, looking at Dalton, was angry that Dalton messed up his plan, and even more frustrated that Dalton wasn't tired after such a grueling test. Dalton wondered where Raoul was, and James was shocked to hear this, wondering why Dalton suddenly showed interest in him. This annoys James because Dalton never showed such concern in their past duels. This reaction made James curious, but he decided not to be bothered, confident that a 15-year-old kid who wasn't an expert couldn't beat both his and Dalton's records. James believed he did his best, and that his record wasn't far from his rivals. He was certain the top spot would be his or Dalton's. Suddenly, a new high score was announced and displayed on the scoreboard. 4 minutes 55 seconds, belonging to Raoul, putting him in first place. The other students chorused that Raoul surpassed Dalton again by a little, wondering how he did it. Raoul was relieved that he matched the record well. James was shocked, wondering how this Ashton kid, who wasn't an expert, achieved these feats. Dalton saw Raoul as a very interesting guy, certain that academy life wouldn't be boring with Raoul around. The council members couldn't believe Raoul was in first place again in the last test, but most were excited about young Raoul being the top student in the entrance exam, congratulating Sir Dylan for his youngest brother's achievement. The principal commented that Raoul's movement was especially interesting, asking if Ashton County taught ranger techniques at a young age. Dylan replied that Raoul was special in their family, having learned various skills. Deep down, even Dylan was clueless about Raoul's skills. James used his bare fists to break obstacles, while Dalton's precise movements with his sword were reminiscent of Swordmaster Marquis. They both used what their families were known for. Raoul used a two-handed greatsword like a classic Ashton, but his movements were beyond anyone's expectations. Most importantly, Raoul didn't trigger a single trap while passing through the cave. Dylan realized that Raoul's movements were impossible unless he was an experienced rogue or ranger. Plus, he didn't use a mana blade like James and Dalton. He decided to give Raoul a good talk, possibly a scolding, for hiding the fact that he reached the expert stage and knew how to use a ranger's navigation skills. Despite this, Dylan was very proud of his younger brother. The placement exam came to a close, and Raoul's fellow brethren congratulated him on his victory. But he went inside his carriage to avoid attention. Inside the carriage, exhausted, he hoped the people at the academy fell for his trick of going easy on the exam. Raoul was happy that everything was going fine for now. Now he just needed to lay low. He decided to take some rest in the carriage, where he fell asleep. He begins to dream about his past life. In the dream, he was in such frustration and anger, asking why the man in front of him had killed the girl in his arms. The man, with a malicious smile, said Bei was acting like his family just died, reminding him that he was an orphan. This man was Han Gilju, the guildmaster of Daesung. Apparently they tried to recruit Bei, but he refused, which led to the current moment. Bei's expression turned scary, and Han teased him, saying Bei looked very scary for killing an NPC. For Bei, this lady who died in his arms was more than an NPC. He met her during the main quest, and she's been his guide ever since, with Bei spending more than a year protecting her from everything. She had become like family to him as they spent lots of time together, and Bei was furious he lost this lady to a guild irrelevant to the quest. Han commanded his men to kill Bei. Using his powers, Bei raised all the weapons present into the air and directed them at Han and his men. The knives and swords struck his enemies dead. Han, the last man standing, couldn't believe Bei was so overpowered, which made him question his gacha game luck. Anyway, Bei points a dagger directly at Han and demands to know why his guild is killing guide NPCs. Bei demanded from Han why he and his men were killing NPCs, asking if they were not afraid of the penalty. Normally, killing quest NPCs is extremely disadvantageous for players. It results in the player's account getting permanently deleted, along with other related accounts. The quest lines continue with new NPCs no matter how many times NPCs are killed. Bei asked why Han and his men were killing them despite the risks. Han, with a crooked smile, doesn't care about penalties, saying only peasants like Bei care about such things. Bei grabbed Han's collar, demanding a real answer, but Han doesn't see any need to answer since Bei was going to kill him anyway. Even if he died, he would just buy himself back to life. Bei knew Han was the grandson of a family that owns one of Korea's top 5 companies, Daesung. Even though Han is much wealthier than Bei, it still doesn't change his mind about killing him. After Bei killed Han, he swore in front of the girl he tried to protect that he would keep killing Han till he got sick of dying in the game, and also rid the game of the Daesung Guild. Raoul woke up from his dream, realizing it was the first time he dreamt about his past life. He felt something was off, then noticed that he had a message. He checks it out, and it's about an update coming to the game in about a month. Raoul was shocked, knowing this would happen eventually, but not expecting it so soon. He knew this meant he would see Han again and would protect the girl from his past life this time. The problem was he couldn't predict the exact time of the update, so he couldn't prepare enough. Now, knowing he had a month, Raoul realized he had to hurry and come up with a plan to dominate the scenario and gather as much as he could before other players joined. He knew future decisions depended on how he used this time, realizing he had to level up and expand his guild first. He also needed to visit the Academy Library and visit the other free cities as well. With how much is on the to-do list, he wondered if he had enough time for all this. So he decided to plan as much as he could tonight and make the most efficient and concrete plan. In some other location, Silver Zero, the Imperial Hound leader, holds a meeting. His subordinates started their reports. The first report was about the royal house, mentioning the king did not show himself except during regular meetings, and that the Sword Emperor did not show at his grandson's admission, but the president was present. Silver Zero announced that exactly 1 month from today, the grand plan would begin, and their hard work would finally pay off. As his subordinates got excited, Silver Zero calmed them, reminding them their roles were more important now, and this was just the first step. Silver Zero asked if Number 7 finished his investigation about Mira. Number 7 replied he wasn't certain of anything, but was sure Randall was involved. A different person commented this was nonsense because there was no movement from Randall and questioned if that's what really happened. Number 7 replied that the circumstances suggested so because the Randalls declared their conquest in Mira on the same day. Most importantly, the power armor and other gear with tracker spells clearly pointed at Randall. An agent wondered how Randalls achieved this with their own strength. But Silver Zero asked if there was any other news. Number 7 reported that Raoul also showed himself but remained in the city. After hearing that, Silver Zero asked if Number 7 thought both Randall and Ashton were working together. Number 7 replied he believed not. So Silver Zero said they should be left out and asked if there was anything else. Number 7 claimed one of the troops spotted Gray. However, Silver Zero told his subordinates to stop the investigations for now, saying there was no need to care about minor stuff when the grand plan was about to start, and decided to let Randall go with a warning. Silver Zero asked what happened at the academy, thinking James was supposed to take the top spot according to their plan. Number 3 replied there was an unknown variable. They kept Dalton in check, but Raoul came out of nowhere. Silver Zero asked how this was possible. One subordinate said to be honest, they didn't really know because Ashton showed no talent last year, but started showing great skill this year. He said it was still within their control, but wasn't sure if Ashton was hiding anything. Silver Zero asked if Raoul could affect their plan. A subordinate replied they believed there was no way since Raoul was still just a 15-year-old kid, saying they planned on using Raoul at the end. If Raoul didn't work, they had an alternate plan for him. Silver Zero was a bit bothered by Raoul showing up everywhere, but knew they had no time to spend on a kid when the grand plan was approaching. He told his subordinates that Gray was more important than Raoul, asking them to figure out why he showed up. Since the plan of using the top student to approach him has failed, the next plan was in order. Silver Zero asked if Number 8 was almost done with the underworld. Number 8 replied there was one guild causing trouble, but it was almost done, assuring their leader it would be taken care of before the grand plan began. Silver Zero told his subordinates to ensure there was no trouble a month from now, telling them not to let their guards down because one variable could ruin their plan. The next day came, and Raoul ended up staying up the whole day. He was sure that with his plan, there wouldn't be any trouble in the future. Raoul scheduled his classes to be 3 days a week of only core classes. A lot of students envied him for having brains, skill, and looks as he walked around the academy. Some students wondered why Raoul was in the academy since he was from a big family. They were sure if they had advanced sword skills like Raoul did, they would be knights by now. Seeing the glances of the students, Raoul told himself there was no need to get involved with them since the academy was only a small part of his life. Shortly, the system notifies Raoul of the placement exam results with him at number 1. After seeing this, Raoul found out he completed a quest relating to that, and the cheap rewards tell him that it wasn't a difficult quest. He still wonders what the mystery extra reward is, but he bets it's nothing much since it was a D-grade quest. After attending some classes, Raoul verified his suspicion that the classes in the academy were not as helpful as expected, even though they were core classes. He was even happier that students were avoiding him because he feared Caleb, Dalton, or James would bother him. Raoul wanted to keep it this way. Shortly, someone searches for Raoul with a scroll in hand. The person hands Raoul the scroll, which contained all the info about the perks he'll get as the top entrant. He was also told that Vice President Gray was looking to talk with him right away. A message popped up on his screen, indicating that the extra reward was meeting the Grand Sage Gray, a historical hero who fought against the Empire. Raoul felt a bit nervous, but also excited about meeting this man. After a while, he arrived in front of the office and knocked on the door. After Raoul stepped in, Gray greeted him warmly, asking Raoul to stand at the door for a moment while he took care of some paperwork. Raoul was amazed by the sage's appearance, having seen pictures and videos of Sage Grey in his past life. Raoul wanted to know more about the sage and used his developed eye to check the stats of the great sage. However, all the stats were hidden except for the information already known by the public. Raoul shivered, seeing the great sage acting as though he knew all of his movements, even though he was looking at the paper. However, Raoul decides to try something else. He points out the fact Grey was hard to meet, but Grey says he wouldn't have to worry about that since he'll be at the academy for a while. After that, he told Raoul to wait a little longer where he stood, saying he was almost done with his paperwork. Then the great sage told Raoul that he had a lot to ask him, including questions about Raoul's eyes. Hearing this, Raoul was really shocked, making him wonder who this great sage truly was. Hearing the comment about his eyes shocked Raoul, making him wonder who this old man really was. He wonders if Grey actually knew about his eyes or if it was just a guess. The old man, with a smile, commented that he was done now and apologized for making Raoul wait, adding that Raoul looked better up close. This made Raoul nervous, but he knew he had to be careful not to expose his secret. The old man offered Raoul some tea, which surprised Raoul as he thought Grey would use a spell to brew it. As the old man sipped his tea, he congratulated Raoul on getting to the top, saying his performance was exciting, but he still wanted to ask a few questions. Raoul wondered why this old man was so curious about him, believing he didn't do anything extraordinary. He commented, wondering why a grand sage was curious about him. The old man asked if Raoul knew about an organization called Imperial Hound. Raoul remembered that 50 years ago, the continent of Connect was in chaos due to the Crownan Empire's invasion, which nearly caused the downfall of 4 kingdoms. Heroes emerged in the most difficult times, putting their lives on the line to stop the Empire and push the enemies back behind the Monster Mountain. After the battle, peace reigned for 50 years, and conflicts between the kingdoms were resolved. However, they didn't forget to prepare for the next invasion. Alfredo built a tower to train talented people, and wandered around the continent searching for an alchemist named Nakia, who Raoul had saved. Grey had the ability to help Nakia with her expulsion from the association, but couldn't do this as he was handling important business. Grey heard about Nakia being pardoned, so he went to Mira and stayed there looking after her. He witnessed Raoul and his people's generosity, and figured out the truth behind the Imperial Hound's conquest. He also found out that Randall took advantage of Raoul's work and realized Raoul gave away the merit to a different family to avoid the Empire's attention. This was shocking to Grey because even though Raoul was young, he chose to prepare for the future rather than basking in the honor in front of him. It was even more shocking that Raoul did not want any compensation for helping the civilians either. Grey saw Raoul as the perfect person to be this world's hero and decided to watch him closely. This is how Grey ended up in the academy, but Raoul would only find out about it in the future. Raoul knew he had to stay sharp even though he had no idea why he was there, and wondered how he would respond to the Imperial Hound question. Seeing Raoul silent, Grey commented with a smile that Raoul was being cautious. He informed Raoul that if anyone else asked about this, it would be good to stay silent like he was now since it was too dangerous for him to handle. Grey finally revealed that he had been watching Raoul all the way from Mira and how he handled conflicts outstandingly. He said Randall would struggle a little, and Raoul couldn't believe what he was hearing, knowing if Randall was aware of this, he would be in trouble. Grey told Raoul not to worry because he wouldn't tell anyone, saying Raoul made the right choice staying anonymous at an age where people are eager to show off. Raoul asked how much Grey knew and why he was staying quiet about it. Grey asked if Raoul knew why the Empire was so dangerous. Raoul believed it was because of their military strength. While that's something to consider, Grey asks if he thought the Empire's land and population overwhelmed the other kingdoms. Raoul knew this wasn't exactly true because the Empire, despite having a large amount of land, had most of it being desolate. He knew the population of the Empire was around the same as one of the kingdoms due to the harsh climate. Grey figured that the only way the Empire surpassed them was in information, saying while they were exposed to the Empire, but they knew nothing about it. The only way to get to the Empire was behind the Monster Mountain and the Forbidden Barrier. The fact that the Empire managed to send spies meant they held the advantage because if they attacked, they would do it knowing they had a good chance to win. Raoul remembered this was exactly how it happened in his past life. They used the players to start the war, and the Empire was close to victory around the time he died. The old sage told Raoul that they needed more people like him, their wild card against the Empire. Raoul began to think if Grey was related to Nakia's growth in his past life. Raoul knew if this was the case, Grey's attention might be helpful, knowing he could accelerate his growth and defeat the Empire together with Grey's help. Grey told Raoul that something was happening out there and needed him to lay low and make smart decisions. Raoul replied, saying he would make sure of that. Grey then said that was great, and that he had a gift for Raoul, saying Raoul would need this gift in the future and that instructions to use it were in the box. Raoul collected a small black box from Gray. Inside it was an expensive-looking ring, and Raoul could feel mana from it. Raoul asked if the old man was sure he could have such a valuable gift. Gray replied yes, saying it was a reward for Raoul. Raoul was shocked to hear this because he believed he didn't do anything to deserve it. He rose, bowed, and thanked the vice president. Gray also thanked Raoul for spending time with him and said he hoped the rest of their academy life went well. As Raoul leaves, he is relieved the meeting went better than he expected. Out of curiosity, he checked the stats of the ring, which shocked him as he realized this was Gray's polymorph ring. Raoul was excited, knowing he got an overpowered item and it was exactly what he needed. Due to his position, he couldn't move around freely and had to bring guards everywhere he went. He had been looking for an item that could hide his identity, and now he had one. On top of that, he could even summon the Gray with it. Learning that made him feel pressured by Gray's expectations, but he decided not to worry about that and made up his mind to use the ring wisely. 2 weeks later, Raoul's academy life was going well. No one was hostile to him except Dalton, who stuck to him all the time, always asking Raoul to hang out. Raoul always turned him down, saying he had things to do. The bad news was that Dalton started sitting next to Raoul and wasn't even looking for another friend apart from him. At first Dalton was annoying, but he never hurt anyone. Plus no one could bother Raoul because Dalton was always next to him, so Raoul figured it's chill. One time, Dalton followed Raoul, telling him to take a break. But Raoul says he's busy as usual. Hearing this, Dalton cursed the library, saying he should have gone for the top spot so Raoul wouldn't be able to visit the library. Raoul suggests he should read a book, but Dalton would rather swing his sword. With that out of the way, Raoul arrives at the library. One of the benefits of being the first rank was admission to every floor in the library, but realistically, Raoul could only enter the 4th floor at most. Only royals and a few professors could enter the 5th floor, but to Raoul, the 4th floor was still amazing, and only about 50 students could enter the 3rd floor. But either way, he decides to find some useful books. A fairy was seen flying around, noting that she had seen everyone present before, and they were reading the same regular books. She wondered if the students had any new books in their bags. As the fairy flew around, she went over to a young female student's side. The fairy pats this lady's head and is proud of her because she is always doing her best. Meanwhile, there was another boy sleeping while using a library book, which angered the fairy. She smacked the boy on the head, which caused him to wake up. He looks around but spots no one behind him. He believes he just got violated by a ghost, which causes him to dash out of the library. This fairy, invisible to the eyes of all the students, was determined not to forgive anyone sleeping in such a sacred library. Meanwhile, Raoul wanders around the library. As he takes a look at the books, he overhears a conversation. A couple of students were talking about the dude who ran away after being slapped by a ghost. Raoul figures it's just some fairy tale since there's a protection spell around the library, so nothing like that can exist in the place. Meanwhile, the ghost fairy gets tired after dealing with a lot of troublesome students. Suddenly, she receives the after effect of the fatigue, so she heads over to a book. Unfortunately, it couldn't relieve her tiredness, so she began contemplating about finding another book. The Great Spell Book could keep her around for 1,000 years. Now she figures she may have to find a book of an equal level to stay in. She flies around, only seeing low-quality books, and figures it's over for her. But she's not willing to give up since she apparently has a long-cherished wish and can feel something special approaching. As the fairy is about to use her wish, she notices something surprising. She spots Raoul in the pile of books he has, so she launches toward him, hoping the books are the right ones for her. On the other hand, Raoul's also searching for a unique skill book, and he can't use the one he already found. His plan was to find a psychokinetic skill book using the info he received from a fellow psychokinetic user. He continues with his searches until he finds a book that catches his attention. This book is a rank C book called Acrobatic Horse Equitation, a combat skill book. He found an art skill book earlier, and the current book makes up for it, so he decides to add it to his skill dex. For Raoul, there are a set number of skill slots he has, so he'll have to delete an old skill to learn a new one. However, he can still register unused skills in the skill dex. So without further ado, he takes out his skill dex and lets it work. It's magic on the book before him. After a skill has been registered, the skill book will turn into a regular book, and this same thing happens with other players as well. So Raoul figures he'll have to find as many books as he still can. So he heads out to find another skill book while it's still registering. Meanwhile, the fairy from earlier had been watching and finds Raoul pretty strange. He's only taking books with similar titles and reading the same section. On top of that, the fairy finds his book selection to be weird and completely unrelated to each other. However, she can tell something is unique with Raoul since he can differentiate between them, plus he's also good looking. Still, it doesn't help matters for her since a person has to be a grand sage or archwizard to talk with her. and the ones she met weren't helpful. In the current moment, her existence is due to many sacrifices, a harsh fate, and coincidences. Additionally, finding a human who can help maintain her existence is getting tiring. Even though the books before Raoul look special, they're not good enough for her. She thought she may have sensed something, but figured she's losing her senses. Soon she begins to wonder why Raoul's touching the book oddly. Then she realizes that's no ordinary book judging from the symbol engraved on it. Raoul whips out a book and gets to work. The fairy witnesses this, and she's absolutely shocked with the fact he's absorbing the power from a book. However, she doesn't see any difference in the one that absorbed the power, and she's curious to take a closer look at the situation. After that, Raoul heads away. While he's gone, the fairy approaches the fancy-looking book, thinking it may just be the book she's been looking for. She stretches out her hand to detect the book's content, but she gets nothing. She's surprised by the fact nothing happened since the great spellbooks and even religious books told her their story and allowed her to stay. So she refuses to accept the situation and tries again multiple times. Even with all that determination, nothing happened. Shortly, Raoul returns and he detects the tiny fairy. He questions what she's doing on his book. Looking at her tiny stature and translucent body, Raoul wonders if she could be a ghost or a fairy. The fairy's surprised that Raoul can see her, which causes her to quickly dash away. Raoul's curious about what she is, but decides not to go after her. After all, she seemed curious about the skill decks, so he bets she'll return eventually. The thing on his mind right now is to find more skill books. Shortly, Raoul's notified that a skill had been registered, and skill-enhancing efficiency has increased. With that, Raoul takes a look at the registered skill, and currently has around 700 skills in his decks. Even though it's all messy, he's still unmatched in the number of skills he has, in his current life and the past one. However, the skill dex is still a rare grade item, so Raoul can't help but wonder how many books he'll have to collect to see its true power. Shortly, the fairy returns much faster than Raoul expected, and she's curious about Raoul's book. Raoul decides to go aggressive, so he says that she should be apologizing for touching his stuff, and questions why he should answer her. The fairy quickly apologizes, fascinated by the rare fact that someone can actually hear her, so she decides to introduce herself. She's a forest fairy who loves harmony and order, and her name is Ravelina Harriet Murdiane, or Ravel for short. Raoul also introduces himself as a student, and points out that Ravel doesn't look like a normal fairy. She confesses that she's more of a ghost, and even humans call her the library ghost. Raoul guesses she might be like a specter, but Ravel doesn't seem pleased by this comment. She clarifies that she's a being that's on the border of life and death. Anyway, Raoul wants to know why Ravel wants his book. She, on the other hand, can tell the book is very special. Even though she doesn't know what the book is and it didn't talk to her, she's very sure that it's special. So she begs Raoul to let her have a look at it. Raoul thinks about this request. He realizes that even he doesn't know much about the skill decks, since there wasn't much information about it in his past. He figures that she could probably upgrade it for him, and he doesn't need to worry about it being stolen since it's bound to him. With that, Raoul permits Ravel to investigate the book. In exchange, she'll have to reveal everything she learned about it. Ravel is delighted to hear this, and she thanks Raoul for it. She heads straight to work, placing her hands on the glowing book. At first, she's enjoying it as she feels the mana flowing through the book. Shortly, she suddenly notices something which surprises her. Then she gets blasted away by the book. She's in disbelief at what she just saw since the book appears to be against the rules, wondering if Raoul predicted something like it. Raoul goes to check up on Ravel, which snaps her out of her thoughts. With sudden excitement, she questions where Raoul found the book, but Raoul tells her to calm down. She then reveals that the book contains the power of the creator god. Not just any regular god, but an ancient creator god who's believed to have vanished. With that said, Raoul stares at the book, surprised by what he just heard. Raoul is shocked to learn such an extreme power exists in the skill decks. However, it doesn't seem very interesting to him since he doesn't know anything about it. Ravel's a bit annoyed by his nonchalance, asking if he's not amazed. Raoul says that's true, and wants her to skip straight to info about the book. But Ravel doesn't know the exact details of the book. The one thing she knows is that the book is forbidden, and seems to have lost its power. Raoul asks if there's a way to bring out its full power, but Ravel has no idea since the book reveals to talk to her. Raoul figures she's useless at this point. Ravel doesn't appreciate this comment since there's no way she could know everything in a short time, so she asks Raoul to let her get in the book. Within this commotion, Raoul receives a notification that asks him if he would like to appoint Ravel as the skill dex's librarian. On seeing this, Raoul figures that the fairy tried to sneak into the book. Even though it's not disadvantageous, he doesn't intend on letting any stowaways in his skill decks. After a bit of staring, Raoul takes his skill decks, believing he doesn't need Ravel and is sure he can solve the book's problems himself. Then he decides to leave since it's late. Ravel's shocked on hearing this, so she rushes for him, begging him to listen. However, Raul insists on leaving since he's busy. She begins to apologize to Raul, adding the fact it's been a while she talked to a human. However, Raul continues with the aggression and brushes her off, claiming to be busy. But Ravel still pleads with him, promising to be helpful and asks Raul to hear her out. At this point, Raul figures he has reached the stage for negotiations. But he notices that Ravel has started crying. She reveals that she's desperate, and is sad by the fact Raul doesn't trust her. Raul tries to calm her down, but Ravel continues to sob due to how mean Raul was. A few tear waterfalls later, Raul apologizes for making Ravel cry, and she accepts it. However, Raul states that he can't let anyone enter his book since it's important. So he asks for Ravel's story and how she got so desperate. After that, he'll decide what will happen next. Ravel agrees to spill it since she trusts Raul. A long time ago, there was a great war across Connect, and this war involved various supernatural entities like gods and demons. This war brought the continent to the brink of destruction, including the forest fairies. So, to save themselves from extinction, they evacuated Ravel, the last heir, into a book. However, the chaotic mana and dimensional fluctuations made her spirit get stuck in the book, while the rest of her kind disappeared into a dimensional crack. She slept for a long time after that, and once she woke up, Ravel learned she needed books as her life support. Additionally, every time she wakes up, she loses some of her memory. All she knows is that she has some kind of duty, and that is to find the rest of her kind scattered around the world. She has to deliver her family's wisdom and essence, but she can't even leave the library because she needs books to live. Even the library is running out of books that can sustain her. But she claims that Raul's skill dex has the same scent as the first book she was contained in, and it could even be better than it. So with that backstory, she asks Raul to let her into the book. After hearing all that, he permits her, but he asks if she's okay with being the book's librarian, which could bind her to him. With a face full of delight, Ravel states she's more than okay with it. But before that, she asks what Raul plans to do with the book. Raul states that he wants to protect his family and homeland, and this means a lot to him. Ravel finds his cause to be a great one, and with that, the two of them agree to work together. However, Ravel says she won't be able to assist right away, since she'll need time to settle down. She reveals that she'll be asleep for about a month, but within that time, the deck should still work as normal. Raul doesn't see a problem with that, so Ravel lands on the book, thanking him, and vowing to help as much as she can once the month has passed. So with that, Raul officially has a fairy companion. Time passed quickly after that moment, and the next thing he knew, the update was due in a week. He still has so much to prepare with such little time. Dylan drags Raul from his thoughts, saying he was proud of how hard he was working. He also mentions the fact Raul was right about an oracle from a shrine and asks how he knew about it. On hearing that, Raul asks what the prophet said. Dylan revealed that while it was strange, the prophet said something about things that disappeared returning, and opening some door to harvest some void fruit. You know, unclear oracle nonsense. Even though everything was pretty vague, Raul figures he can't just ignore it either. He asks how the shrine reacted, and Dylan says that all they did was got more troops to prepare for this great danger. Raul then asked for the nobles' reaction. Dylan laughed, saying that most of them didn't take it seriously. He would have done the same thing too if not for Raul. There were also a lot of precedents as well, like the Holy Empire, which is ruled by the Pope. This Holy Empire is a small city-state alliance that's formed by Garnelia and several other mid-sized cities. Despite the empire's small scale, it holds its imperial title due to its religious influence. It's also designated as an impermeable domain where they announce many oracles. Raul expresses his worry that it would be too late if nothing ends up happening, but Dylan assures him that they'll do everything possible. He had already spread the message of how to react to their people and other close families. So Dylan urges his little brother to quit worrying and asks for a workout session together and a demonstration of Raul's strange skills. Raul figures that his family really knows how to lock in on what they want, especially his father and brother. This is why Dylan took Raul's words seriously once Raul told his brother about the update, saying it was from an oracle. Also, Dylan learned about Raul's psychokinesis, and ever since then, he's been asking for a demonstration. Anyway, time went on, and Raul headed to training with Dylan. Raul doesn't seem used to the training because Dylan keeps telling him to focus only on his physical abilities and not depend on his skills. Raul actually started training with his brother since Dylan kept insisting on it. Even though it's difficult, Raul's muscles have grown, and his psychokinesis body enhancement has gotten to the level he was at in his past life. Dylan, on the other hand, focuses solely on physique. This is why, even with his inhuman body, there are many weaknesses in his combat skills. The enemies they'll face in the war will be pretty tough, which is why Raul believes he'll need combat skills. Combine that with his prime physique, and you have a complete war machine right there. Raul is sure that Dylan can notice the skill gap between them is getting smaller. Soon, Dylan will realize that he can't rely on his body alone, and that's when Raul will present the option of skills to him. After all, Raul also wants everyone around him to be stronger as well, and he considers this plan interesting. After that training session, Raul ventures off in a carriage, and he's almost done with all that needs to be done before the update. However, he still can't get over how normal everyone is acting despite the Oracle's announcement. None of the lords are making any preparations since it's not the first time they've heard strange things from the shrine. This isn't favorable for Raul since he'll need a lot of help from the kingdom to progress through the scenario. There will be times when a large number of troops are needed due to monsters invading and war with the Empire, so the kingdom's troops have to be prepared for that incident. Raul already knows his limits. Even though he's a count's son and knows the future, he's still a 15-year-old kid. So, he focused on the things he can do like paying attention during academy lectures and searching for skill books in the library. He also visited 3 other beginner cities during his free time. While Mira resides in the south, there's also Kessin in the east, Bryant in the west, and Zusek in the north, making that a total of 4 beginner cities in Ruben Kingdom. He used the letter of recommendation he got in Mira to meet with the mayors of these other cities. They also accepted Raul's offer to invest in their cities since their situation was pretty much the same as Mira's. From there, Raul started large-scale civil engineering projects and established branches of the First Guild. Even though it all cost a jaw-dropping 3.5 million gold, it was all worth it. All that's left is to finish with construction before the players start rolling in. Raul also issued mercenary recruitment notices in all 4 cities and the capital's mercenary guild. This was done to hire mercenaries of at least C rank and small-scale mercenary groups of up to 10 members. The offer states that Raul will pay double during the first month, and if they're good enough, he'll offer them a chance to join the guild or become a trainee knight. Since the offer was amazing, Raul received a large amount of applicants at 50 B ranks and 950 C ranks. Hiring them all took at least 30,000 gold, and more of that gold will be gone just to keep them. But still, Raul believes it's all worth it. He won't have to worry even if a high-level battle were to break out. While a few nobles talk about Raul's excessive expenditure, Raul asks if Philip called the guild members. Philip had called the 45 members of the guild, except for the executives who were divided into 10 and finished training. With that, Raul instructs him not to let his guard down since they have a mission tonight. Many things changed within all the time that passed. CIS trainees reached the expert level and were promoted to regular knights, plus 9 other knights including Philip, Jake, and Pierce became regular members of the First Knight. Additionally, the trainee knights and other soldiers are affiliated with the First Knights. And with that, the First Guild will make its first public move as First Knights. Raul takes a look at the guild members' stats. He picked people with a potential talent of B rank or higher, but they're much better than he expected, and is looking forward to their growth. At this point, Raul has done everything he can to prepare for the oncoming update. All that's left for him is to hope everything goes as planned, while he watches the update countdown timer. At some other location, Silver Zero holds a meeting, asking for the report. His subordinates report that the royal family increased their patrols, the same with the Templeton and McNeil families. Silver Zero asks if the Ashton County is religious, and Number 6 says they aren't even though they have a good relationship with the shrine. He also points out the fact they were preparing before the Oracle's announcement, and figures they have a different source. Silver Zero asks about Gray, but it seems he's currently focused on the academy. Silver Zero then asks Number 8 if the mercenary squad infiltration was successful. Unfortunately, he reports that everyone failed. Another person's shocked by this, considering the fact that they were looking for 1,000 men. So, Number 8 revealed that they passed the pre-test, but failed the main test. This makes him believe that Raul has a special ability. Silver Zero remains speechless after hearing this. However, his colleagues wonder if they need to worry about Raul since he has no benefit from the plan. While that may be true, Silver Zero decides to keep him under surveillance. He then asks for the agents, and his colleague states that everyone's in place. With that, the grand plan to kill all the nobles is about to begin. So Silver Zero instructs his troops to remain focused. Then they all hail their emperor, while Silver begins to wonder about Raul. Back in the peaceful town, a child points to the sky, showing his mother something. A bunch of purple meteors light up the sky, and the lady wonders why there are so many. But out of nowhere, a sudden earthquake appears, catching the civilians by surprise. The mother holds her son tightly to protect him, but shortly, a magic gate appears before them. As you would expect, the civilians wonder what it is, but they quickly find out when a horde of monsters emerge from it. They rush into attack while the lady's frozen in fear, but fortunately, Jake arrives to save the day. He and some other guards with him take care of the monsters and instructs the civilians to evacuate. Then Jake reports that they found a gate at their location, so they prepare to defend as they evacuate the civilians to safety. It's not just Jake who reports this. Pierce and Philip also report the same issue of monsters popping up. Raul, who's the head of operations, receives these reports from his troops and gives commands to them. He's aware that what's happening right now is the update. He summons Bernard, who appears as a purple hologram, and instructs him to select and dispatch soldiers to each section. Raoul knew something like this would happen, but he never expected it to happen everywhere. Despite all the preparations, the entire situation is still a close call. To begin, there wasn't enough info about the quest. The only thing Raoul knew was that the kingdom was nearly destroyed in the year 521 due to the appearance of gates. However, he didn't have any information about the gates. He wishes to clear the gates by himself. But now he has an entire squad with him, so he intends to use the force of his guild to minimize casualties, although he would be able to place his troops more efficiently if he knew the gate's ranks. Shortly, he spots a notification screen. It shows him a new quest where the objective is to clear as many gates as possible, including the fact they'll refresh every midnight. Raoul is shocked by this information and questions this unfair mechanic. Then he begins to wonder if this canon event was unavoidable from the start. Apparently, Connect has a system that stops anything that can affect the scenario. Not only that, it can add special requirements to quests, which is usually a sudden or follow-up quest. With that in mind, Raoul realizes that it doesn't matter how many gates that are cleared. But still, he doesn't intend to give up even with how dire the situation is. So he decides to find a way to minimize the damage. Raoul receives a report that a golden gate has been located. Even though nothing was happening in that area, the force from it was getting stronger. Raoul orders the soldiers to stay back since that gate can suck in anything. Then he orders for 3 B-rank mercenaries and intends to put that area under special watch. After seeing that a D-rank gate appeared, Raoul figures that it's no longer time to command, it's now time for him to fight. Within the battlefield is a 21-year-old C-rank mercenary named Josh. He had his humble beginnings on a small farm at F-rank, and he worked his way up the mercenary ladder. Back then, he saw Raoul's offer, looking to turn mercenaries into knights. So Josh signed up and received a cozy house and a meal that was better than anything he had ever eaten. He thought he could enjoy a normal life by catering to the noble's mood. However, he never expected to be in such a scenario, facing some rat-looking monsters. The monsters before him charge to attack, but Josh readies himself and deals with the attacking monsters. By the time he was done, more monsters emerged from the gate. At this point, he's running out of energy, and as if that wasn't bad enough, a bigger-looking monster shows up. With how many there are, Josh figures he can't push them off any longer, so he makes a gamble to go for the bigger monster first and scare off the small ones. As he charges into battle, a mysterious figure passes him, along with a few floating weapons. Then those weapons are sent flying into the monsters. Of course, Raoul is responsible for this attack, and he finishes things by slicing off the head of the large monster. Raoul apologizes for interrupting, and also asks if the soldier was a part of the first guild. Josh says he was, and also introduces himself. While Josh's plan from earlier was ambitious, Raoul informs him it was too risky since ratmen aren't easily scared. Even though Josh is a rank C mercenary, Raoul tells him that rank D gates are too difficult for him, and offers Josh to join him. After hearing that, Josh wonders who he's talking to. Jake pops us shortly, and seeing the fact Josh is new, he introduces Raoul to him, the master of the first guild. Josh is shocked to hear that, and Jake informs him that he picked the wrong guild if he was looking to have a good time, since it was made by the son of a count. He adds that the guild is for the ones who are qualified, and tells Josh to follow along. With the area secured, Raoul marches forward with his troops. Josh reflects on what Jake said for a moment, then he runs along with the team. A gate emerges at a different location, and some ratmen spawn from it. Shortly, one ratman spots as Raoul charges in to end their careers. Of course, the other ratmen are not pleased with this. Seeing their large numbers, Raoul figures it was a good thing he came alone. He decides to settle things quickly since he doesn't have enough time to clear every gate. Jake points out there are a lot of them present, and figures the monsters have a base nearby. Raoul thinks that might be possible, so he asks for a scout to search. As Josh heads to battle, Raoul states that rescuing civilians is the top priority. Josh charges into battle, and one by one he slices up the ratmen. After witnessing this display of combat skill, Jake figures that he certainly is a special case. From what he saw, Raoul deduces that Josh's sword skills are rough, but he has good senses. And with a thumbs up, Josh has secured the area. Raoul figures he has talent, and he'll be much better if he learns how to wield mana. Shortly, a guard reports that the Ratman base has been located behind the forest. Additionally, they didn't spot any civilians at the base. Even with how large the base is, there were no other monsters there. Jake mentions that they made sure no civilians were near the gate, which explains why none of them are in the forest. Even with that, Raoul orders the soldiers to search everywhere since they can't afford to lose any civilians. Even though clearing the gates is important, rescuing civilians remains the top priority. Raoul asks Josh to come with him to the base, After that, he makes it clear to his troops that the night will be a long one, and everyone has to be ready for it. The next day, after all the chaos had died down, Raoul talks with Dylan, who points out the fact he looks so tired after night 1. So he suggests that he and Raoul have to work out more together. However, Raoul wants to head straight to business and asks for what happened at home. Dylan wonders why he looks so worried. He mentions the fact they had all the information, so they were perfectly prepared. Raoul asks how many gates appeared at home. Dylan reveals that 100 of them popped up with 10 being D rank and found it easy. However, Raoul's shocked by this since it's way worse than what he expected. But Dylan didn't see it as a big deal. Raoul decides to head back to assist his brother, but Dylan says the gates have already been cleared out. This statement surprised Raoul. Then Dylan adds that everything took half a day to handle. This was thanks to powerful figures like Count Ashton, their father, Master Trevor, and Commander Ernest. In fact, they were all craving violence and were bored with ordinary life. Seeing such energized old men run around was certainly amusing for Dylan, while Raoul gets a reminder that he doesn't come from a regular family. Even though everything ended well, Raoul figures that Dylan's actions were too reckless, so he instructs his brother to leave the D-rank gates since they're too dangerous. Dylan questions why he should do something like that, and reminds Raoul that the Ashton County is strong. He adds that neither he nor his father are weak and Raoul doesn't need to worry about them, so the number of gates doesn't matter since they'll always be ready for an enemy. Additionally, Dylan rejects the help from Raoul's knights and says that 100 gates are nothing for them. Raoul gets lost in thought, but Dylan snaps him back to reality. He instructs Raoul to do what he wants and not worry about home. With that, Raoul acknowledges his brother's rambling and figured he was being too arrogant. Now that Raoul seems to understand, Dylan mentions the fact that some gates didn't disappear even after they were cleared, and asked why that happened. As you would expect, Raoul is shocked to hear this news. Much later, Raoul holds a meeting with his closest crew and tells them the latest intel from his brother. Even though there was little damage, Raoul figures that the one thing they were worried about actually happened. Jake mentions they could keep an eye on the home base, but that could cause a few issues. If they put more men on surveillance, their defense could fall short, so they'll have to come up with a better idea. However, Raoul's still curious about why the gates aren't disappearing. Bernard suggests arranging the troops, but Raoul decides that won't be necessary. This time, it'll be himself, Philip, Jake, and Pierce who'll be heading out. Philip suggests that their numbers would be too little, but Raoul mentions how the retired old guys are going berserk at home, so they can't just sit back and watch. Then Raoul orders Bernard to send 10 soldiers to scout the gate for any civilians. This journey reminds Jake of earlier days, however, Pierce informs him that was just 2 months ago. Besides, he reminds him that they're not going for a picnic, so there's no room for goof-offs. But Jake gets upset, telling him that he was only joking. One time skip later, and we arrive at a gate with some monsters emerging from it. Raoul asks his crew if anyone's tired after they've annihilated a ton of monsters. Since no one appears to be tired, he informs his crew that they'll have to speed things up. With that said, the monsters all charge in to attack. Raoul and his men all attack the monsters, with Jake fighting with excitement. Jake mentions the fact he was bored. Little did he know that a monster was about to land a sneak attack. Luckily, a couple of arrows put the goblin out of its misery. Jake's surprised by what happened, and the person behind this assist was none other than the sharpshooter, Pierce. However, Jake takes this personally and claims to have everything under control. Then he tries to make a bet on who can get more kills, but Philip tells him to stop that. Meanwhile, Raoul surveys the rough terrain and doesn't see anything special with it. Soon, Josh arrives to give a report. He pretty much says the same thing as Raoul. A troublesome terrain with nothing special. Plus, there are no civilians as well. Raoul figures that something's made in a way that only players can approach them, which was what he expected. As for what he's rambling about, it's about dungeons. Normally, gates and dungeons can be cleared easily by the NPCs of Connect, since they're much stronger than players. However, the players wouldn't be okay with that. Because of this, there are strong restrictions that do not allow NPCs to enter Gate Guardian or Dungeon Boss rooms. So Raoul thinks of what he can do next. Shortly, he receives a notification, stating that the conditions for a hidden quest have been met. The objective of this hidden quest is to eliminate the Gate Guardian. Normally, Raoul would be glad to receive this, but currently, he's in a hurry. Apparently, his teammates also received the same quest as well. Philip wonders if they'll have to find the Guardian since they didn't come across any Guardian-looking enemies earlier. However, Josh draws the team's attention to a monster in the distance. This huge monster that obviously looks like a boss steps forward, and the team will have to go against a dark corrupted goblin who's the E-rank Gate Guardian. Philip figures that the goblin is the gate's guardian. The team found it rather handy the Guardian came straight to them. Josh volunteers to take care of the monster, but Raoul has already gone Super Saiyan and asks everyone to back off since he'll be taking the monster alone. Jake wonders what's up with Raoul, but Philip reminds him that Raoul always leads the battles. The reason for this is that there'll be no rewards when an NPC defeats the Guardian. Even though he doesn't expect much from an E-rank gate, there's no reason not to get the benefits. Besides, Raoul also wants to see if the gate will remain open when he defeats the Guardian. Soon the battle begins, and the goblin attacks with its mace first. Raoul defends against the attack, then he maneuvers with his sword, making the Guardian lose its balance. With the opening he has now, he slices the goblin across its chest. The rest of the soldiers watch this brawl and are in awe of Raoul's pro-swordsmanship. However, Josh finds the way that Raoul countered to be crazy and is amazed by the skill of the guildmaster. Meanwhile, Raoul stands victorious and has seen what E-rank guardians are like. With the Guardian defeated, Raoul waits for the message that says, "The gate will disappear." But instead of getting that, an error message pops up instead. Of course, Raoul is confused by what he's looking at. Anyway, Raoul shows his squad core ore, the heart of a power armor. It was found in the heart of the goblin, and Raoul states that they have to collect lots of them to possibly make a power armor factory. Now the squad has learned about this valuable item. Raoul glances back at the gate. It didn't disappear even though he defeated the Guardian, and he can't go against the scenario. However, Raoul planned to follow it anyway since he could just farm XP from the infinitely respawning gates. Raoul announces that they're all going to hunt every D-rank gate in the capital. He points out they'll need one more mercenary, so he asks Josh to fill the spot. Since Raoul took his moment to shine, he wants to give Josh another go, and Josh is very willing to go. With the team now decided, they head to work. Shortly, Raoul passes through the gate and wonders where he's at. He appears to be at a random dark cave, with the only source of light being from the gate. Raoul never expected this, but luckily he came prepared. As he fiddles with his inventory, the rest of his men pop out of the gate, wondering where they are. Raoul whips out a lantern, giving them a light source. Jake recognizes the lantern as a magic lamp, which is a rare item. As for Philip, it's the first time he's seen one. Now they have a way to look around, but Raoul instructs his team to stick together. Raoul then turns his attention to Josh, since it's his first mission, and hands him the lamp. Josh is nervous about receiving such a valuable item, but Raoul trusts him, so he encourages Josh to do his best as the guild's rookie. On hearing that, Josh's desire for success kicks in, and he's now determined to protect the lamp with all he's got. However, Raoul knows that he's the lucky one. As he takes a look at Josh's stats, Raoul knows that Josh will become an S-rank mercenary, and will become a possible candidate to become the mercenary king. Raoul asks Pierce how the scouting's going, and Pierce reports the fact there are movements in the dark. One thing he's sure about is that they're definitely not friends. Suddenly, Pierce detects something, and he quickly lamp. Raoul tells Josh to drop the lamp. However, he's shocked to find out that Josh is ready to throw hands with the bats any day. He begins to slice through all the bats while protecting the precious lamp. With how crazy he's gone, Jake figures that Raoul may have hyped him up too much. But Raoul figures it's nice to have an energetic person in the squad, and considers this as an admission test. So they all stand by, watching their new rookie deal with the swarm of bats and continue to hype him up.